Going to continue with this endeavour for weeks and months on end. He was speaking after the first in-person talks between the US, Ukraine, the UK, France and Germany ahead of further meetings scheduled in London next week. Ross Cullen, Paris.
US President Donald Trump has expressed 100% confidence that the United States will reach a trade deal with the European Union. His comments came as he hosted Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni at the White House, the first European leader to visit Washington since Trump brought in 20% tariffs on the EU, then paused them earlier this month. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
The Italian Prime Minister also voiced optimism about securing a trade deal with the US, and she invited President Trump to meetings in Italy to advance those talks. Giorgia Meloni shares a warmer relationship with the president than other EU leaders. She was the only EU leader to attend Donald Trump's inauguration earlier this year, and he heaped praise on her ahead of their meeting, saying she had taken Europe by storm. She said her goal is to make the West great again. Ms. Meloni has a tightrope to walk between representing the interests of the EU and remaining in the US president's good books. Kate Fisher, Washington.
And the Trump administration says it will appeal a federal judge's order to provide sworn testimony over its efforts it made to return a man mistakenly deported to El Salvador. The Supreme Court has called on it to facilitate Kilma Abrego Garcia's return to the US, upholding a court order by the judge. The White House claims he had ties to the criminal gang MS-13, though his lawyers say there's no evidence of that. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is defending his deportation.
He was illegally inside our country and had a lawful deportation order made him subject to removal back to his home country of El Salvador. And if he ever ends up back in the United States, he would immediately be deported again.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. At least 3 people have died and dozens injured after a severe hailstorm and torrential rain battered Islamabad. With Pakistan ranked as the 5th most climate vulnerable country globally, experts are sounding an alarm over worsening weather patterns and demanding the government urgently scale up climate adaptation measures. Hira Mustafa reports.
Eyewitnesses have described hailstones the size of golf balls pelting Pakistan's capital city of Islamabad. Some northern provinces have also reported flooding. The violent storm swept through the capital and northwestern parts of Pakistan on Wednesday, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Officials say there has been significant damage to solar panels, vehicles, and residential properties. In 2022, widespread flooding linked to climate change left 1/3 of the country submerged. This year, the country is seeing record heat waves with temperature at least 7 degrees above normal. Environmentalists blame climate change and shifting monsoon patterns, urging authorities to adopt climate-resilient policies. Hira Mustafa, Islamabad.
A federal judge has ruled that Google broke antitrust laws by maintaining an illegal monopoly in the digital advertising space. The decision could force major changes to one of the tech giant's biggest revenue streams. Ira Spitzer reports.
A U.S. district judge has found Google guilty of using its dominance in online advertising to block rivals and limit choice for advertisers and publishers. The Justice Department says Google acquired competitors and tied key products together, leaving much of the industry dependent on its tools. The judge said Google's conduct violated the Sherman Antitrust Act and caused substantial harm to both competition and consumers. While the company plans to appeal, the Justice Department may now push to break up Google's ad business entirely. This is the second time in under a year that a federal court has called Google an illegal monopolist. Ira Spitzer, San Francisco.
I'm Caroline Malone in Washington, and that was The Week in Review.
People love photography. But when we thought about photography, we realized one thing. Humans are limited to looking at photos with our eyes. That's a problem, right? So we made an app, PicSong, the first program that turns your photos into music if you want to do that for some reason. It puts the power in your hands. You get to decide why you need this. I can't tell you why you need this. It's not my job. Who is this app for? Maybe it's for students, or artists, or blind people. But can it turn your music into photos? No, it can't. Do you get to keep the original photo? No, it gets deleted. Always back up your photos before using PicSong.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. Talk radio you control. Give us a call. Get your thoughts on the air. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. Tonight in the studio, it's Stu,
Riley,
and Bonnie.
And the point of this show is all about the callers. And we already have one on the line, so we're going to go straight to the phones. I believe we have, is this James? Timothy? Sorry.
Yeah, Tim James.
Okay. Hi, welcome to Free Talk Live.
Thanks for having me. Is Jay there?
No, Jay's not on tonight, but you mentioned that he told you to call. I saw him today. I was at his house.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Awesome. Were you working in the garden?
No. I just basically walked around with him while he moved trailers, and he pulled me and his kids in like a little horse trailer thing, so that was fun, and got to let my dog run around. I am going to start going there with the homeschool group to like do things because I just want to, I don't know, I just want to be helpful and get out of the house, and it feels so much better than just sitting in my house. Every time I go to the domes, it's like, I don't know how to explain it.
It's a really nice place.
It is.
I was up there for an extended period.
And Jay's a good guy, so.
Yeah, and I love his wife too. She showed me the baby chickens.
Nice.
Yeah, I met him down in Acapulco in Mexico at that convention down there. We had a booth down there and got to know him and a whole bunch of other cool people. And I've got a regenerative farm up here in Northeast Oregon, so we kind of were comparing notes on that. And I also help people with their health. I wasn't sure what Jay wanted me to come on because we do farming stuff, and then we also help people with their gut microbiome and healing and that kind of stuff. I've been a health coach for about 10 years and in the industry for about 14. But I think what's coming to mind today is just bringing awareness to people. And when I always bring awareness to people, I want to do it without fear, even though people might feel that initially, or we don't want to stay in that state because fear actually creates poor chemistry in the body and lowers the immune system. And the thing that I was on a show not too long ago, and everybody was talking about Trump getting shot, and there was a whole bunch of people on the show. It's called Union of the Unwanted. And I don't know if you guys heard of that?
No.
Yes, I have.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think
Union of the Unwanted started, I think, in 2019 as a group of podcasters who were kind of felt themselves on the outside of, even kind of on the outside of the alternative media. It's a good show.
Well, we'd all gotten like kicked off and deplatformed, all our channels taken away and stuff in many places. And anyway, everybody was talking about Trump getting shot, and I was like, hey, well, did you guys hear the news? 4,300 people in the United States died today. And they were like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you guys haven't heard about this? And they're like, no, because everybody was focusing on Trump. I said, well, actually, 4,300 people died today of processed food in the United States. And that happened yesterday, and it actually happened today. It's going to happen tomorrow. And we're actually paying for this food with our after-tax dollars in the grocery stores. And I try to bring awareness to this because it's like a 9/11 and a half event every single day.
Do you calculate that number based on like people who died of like metabolic disease?
It's processed food, and it's the slow degradation of the immune system.
How did you come up with the number 43? What was it? 4,300?
It's 4,300.
How did you come up with that number?
A day. Well, there's many people that have that agree with this number, and I guess it would be based on what's the word? It's chronic conditions, and it's also cancer and all these things. My company's called chemicalfreebody.com, and back in 2011, I looked up a study in the umbilical cord blood. I'm looking something up right now. So,
I've got a story here from the Mirror that substantiates what you're saying.
It's like all over the place. There's this one gal that she's on it and got the statistics. I was trying to find it.
This is blaming it on processed meats, though, specifically.
Well, processed meats are also a problem. Did you know that the ground beef in the grocery stores isn't even just one cow? It's like a mixture of a whole bunch of different cows. That grosses me out, now that I know that.
There's nitrates and nitrites that are put in the meat. Most people don't know that like somewhere between 40 and 60% of the meat, if you go into a grocery store, would be gray in color if they didn't put nitrates and nitrites in it. And nobody would want to buy gray meat.
Wow.
For the most part. I don't think they would.
Yeah, I've never thought about that. But another thing is in Applebee's, at least, and I'm sure more people or more places do this than just Applebee's, a filler that they put in every single one of the meats, including the steak and the burgers, is soybean oil.
Wow, that's crazy.
No reason for that. It's almost like just like having fun, like
they
killing people.
Probably get a government subsidy for doing so, would be my guess.
Soy is subsidized.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you actually take the samples out of grocery stores of meat, just as an example, not to knock on meat because the veggies have been compromised too. If you look at it under a microscope, it's pretty horrendous what's crawling around inside these things. But the whole thing is this processed food thing is a problem. In the womb, there's these articles go back. People can look this up on the internet. If you search umbilical cord chemical, just put those 3 words in, umbilical cord chemical, and you search that, you'll find that studies going back to 2005, every time they looked in the womb, they found, they looked for 400 chemicals in this one study. They found 250 of what they were looking for, about 71%. And 180 cause cancer in humans, 212 cause developmental and brain disorders, and it's already in the womb. We actually wrote an ebook called Dying in the Womb, just to bring awareness to this. And that's when I stepped back in my chair, I'm like, oh my God, like the older we are, the more time we've had to bioaccumulate these toxins. So I went down this rabbit hole on this, and that was in the blood, in the blood serum. But the toxins are actually 500 to 1,000% more concentrated in the fat and muscle tissue in humans. So it's like a big problem. And then you have people with all these chronic health issues, whether it's overweight, or they got diabetes, or they got fibromyalgia, or colitis, or Crohn's, or diverticulosis, or diverticulitis, or Graves' disease. And there's this underlying thing of all these toxic chemicals that are inside of people. And if people can learn how to stop putting them in and buy fresh food and really high quality food, and do things to get them out, like through detoxification, really good clean water, taking certain detox products, zeolites, infrared saunas, moving your body, sweating, all these things, having a good detoxification lifestyle, they can start healing, and then they can start losing weight. And a lot of people are trying to lose weight in this country. I mean, it's like, it's unbelievable how, back in the 50s, there was nobody on the beach that was overweight. And today, 2/3 of us are overweight.
Yeah, it's a product of the food being totally deficient of nutrients. And so people need to eat more of it. And so they're kind of starving and fat.
It's unfortunate. It was a couple years ago. That's why I decided to get our farm going again, because I was sitting here and our other neighbors spray their wheat with glyphosate to finish it off and dry it really quickly. It has nothing to do with the herbicide part on the wheat, but they spray it with wheat. That's why wheat's destroying people's gastrointestinal tracts. But I watched the south wind carry that big, huge spray of chemicals, and it went right over the top of my other neighbors' 2- and 4-year-olds.
Oh my God.
That's when I was like, oh my God, like, I've been helping people with their gut and healing, but it's like the root, if people want to go upriver to all the problems, it's this massive mega agriculture where they're tilling, destroying the soil microbiome, and then spraying with pesticides and fungicides and herbicides and chemical fertilizers and all this stuff. And so we're on a mission to create a nonprofit educational farm and start educating the farmers that they can actually grow better crops, not kill themselves and their employees. Because I've got neighbors living around me that have cancer, and they'll tell you they think they got cancer from spraying glyphosate or whatever they're spraying. this guy right next to me, he's had cancer for a few years, and he thinks that that's why it is. He's a farmer. But if we go upriver and we can get the farmers going back to nature and working with the soil microbiome and making that a focus, we can grow strong plants. And then if we eat those plants, then we can be strong, and the animals that eat those plants can be strong. And if we choose to eat those animals, then, well, it's just the food chain. The soil's been compromised, and the soil is like it's the digestive tract of the plants. It just happens to be outside of them, where our digestive tract is inside of us. So our gut's screwed up. We have poor health. We're weak. If the plant's gut is screwed up, the soil, then they become weak and sick. And then they've convinced farmers that they have to spray. And so I know this is not a fact, because I can go up on the mountain up here every year and pick huckleberries, and they're awesome. And I don't have to weed them. I don't have to water them. I don't have to do nothing. I just go up there and they're perfect. And that's kind of where we have to get back to, because if we don't, the amount of chemicals and toxins that are in the water and the food and all this stuff, it's literally destroying our children's health and everybody else's health along the way. And
I totally agree.
We got to vote with our dollars. I mean, that's where it's at. We have to vote with our dollars and get educated on this stuff, because I knew nothing about this 14 years ago. And my health, I was an athlete for 30 years, played baseball and pretty high level. And then at age 37, I was 42 pounds overweight, severe gastrointestinal issues, poop and blood. I had to be life flighted on emergency surgery to get an organ removed, skin issues, psoriasis, eczema, cracking and bleeding. I had a lot of issues going on. And when my friend got cancer, we went to this detox institute, learned all about cleaning up the digestive tract and cleaning up the cells. And I was like, I thought it was a bunch of woo-woo BS, but I felt better than I'd felt in 30 years. It was just amazing. I felt like I was like 15 again. It was just amazing. And my friend actually in 2.5 years healed himself of a blood cancer.
Is that from the zeolite?
What's that?
Is that from the zeolite?
Well, he changed his whole lifestyle. I mean, he had a drop in 60 pounds. I dropped 42 pounds, and his son-in-law Adam dropped 80, and we lost all that weight within like 60 to 90 days. When we started juicing, greens, no sugar. We did go plant-based for a while. I eat a little bit of meat now, but it's super fresh and clean. And we just changed our life. We took zeolites. They were in other formulas as part of the formula.
Is it possible to buy food from a grocery store that isn't poison?
It's really hard.
I know the organic label only halfway matters anymore.
Yeah, it's gotten really bad. I used to take people one-on-one to grocery stores, and then eventually that turned into classes. I had about 5,500 people to my house teaching them, these living food detox nutrition classes, and then I'd go to grocery stores and have groups of 10 or 20. And I've always read labels.
That's a great idea. There's so many people that I start talking to about anything like this, and then they're like, wow, so the other day at the grocery store, I realized this one thing has this, and in my mind, I'm like, yeah, and it also has this, and this, and maybe some people that are interested enough, I could just take them to the grocery store with me, because I remember it was only 3 years ago now that I first started trying to just not eat seed oils, which whether we agree on that, it's a moot point, but so just being okay, so it's probably going to change what I eat a little bit, and realizing it's in every single thing that's a packaged thing. And now I don't really eat just things in packages almost at all anymore. It's very, very rare that I do, because some of them, you'll just be this thing is fine, it's not that bad, but it's very rare. I used to be when it first started, it was wow, I had to stop eating several things, and then I realized there's more things to ignore, because now it's not just seed oils. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a very important topic too, because it's hard to even live your life when you're suffering from health conditions that just kind of drag you down and make you feel like you don't have enough in you to get the things done that you otherwise would in life.
Yeah. Well, there's an old Chinese proverb that says a healthy man wants 1,000 things. A sick man wants one.
Oh yeah.
And you're right. I mean, and I was in that point. I was actually living in fear. Going to the number 2 bathroom for me started becoming anxiety, because on a scale of 1 to 10, it became a 7 or 8 on the pain scale.
Oh my goodness.
Blood coming out, and then sticking my head and saying, God, I hope that goes away, and go to the doctor, oh, just take some Prilosec, or here, take this, and you read the list of side effects, and one of the side effects is rectal bleeding. I'm like, I already have this. Like, why would I do that? But, so for me, like, I got educated. I got lucky. My friend getting cancer was like the best thing that ever happened to him. And he ended up healing himself with cancer. He's still alive today. Got his life back. And it happened right in front of me. So now my whole belief system had changed. I mean, I thought you get cancer and that's it. I lost my grandma to cancer. I lost my aunt to cancer. They were older. But then I lost the guy on my baseball team to cancer at age 40. And then when Charles got diagnosed at 43, then I'm like, geez. I'm like, he's the healthiest one out of all. It was like, if he's getting, I'm screwed, But we learned this. We came back. We both healed. If I've been teaching people, it's like, look, if the soil is destroyed, and the food is coming out of that, and then it's processed, and then it's put in boxes and cans and all this weird stuff, and then it's heated, and then they put synthetic vitamins back in it, which are not vitamins, they're just synthetic chemicals. And on average, this stuff is shipped, 1,000 to 2,000 miles. How healthy is it going to be?
Probably not very.
Compared to nature, where everywhere in nature, all these creatures are literally picking food out of the dirt and eating it right on the spot, where it has that living nutrition, where it's got this electron life force energy into it, which is actually a very important nutrition for us. It's not just fat, carbs, and protein. There's also these phytonutrients, that are in living plants. And then on top of it, there's the energetics of the plants.
Yeah, I think people inherently notice, and that's why the things like apple picking are so popular.
What was popular?
Apple picking. People are just going to, apple orchards and picking their own apples. They're far better than the ones you get in the store, because even after just a couple of days, they've lost a lot of their flavor.
I've never
they've lost a lot of the enzyme activity, actually.
I've never went apple picking, but I have heard people say that. They're like, oh, it's always like the best apples too. And I guess I just thought, because they grow nice apples at those orchards, but that's a good point, that maybe it's more like kind of like the experience / getting it directly out of a tree, and it's more recently been in a tree.
I heard an interview with a lady that goes by the name Fermented Fairy, who made a good argument for eating living foods.
Yeah, I think it was refrigerators. God, I can't remember when it was, but those things have only been around since I think the early 1900s or something like that. And before that, fermenting was kind of the way to keep everything fresh, and people had root cellars and stuff like that.
Yep.
We were more connected to the earth. Even back in wartime, we had victory gardens here.
So what's your approach to working with? Do you work with people who already have established farms, or do you work like one-on-one with people starting homesteads, or what's your focus there?
Well, we're actually kind of in that process ourselves. My main business has been coaching, health coaching, and supplying people with detoxification and nutrition type products that are herbal based, and we have some nano silvers, and I've curated some pretty cool stuff over the last 14 years in my own journey. And every day I'm always looking for new stuff, and I buy things, I try them out on myself, and we try to vet things for our clients, our customers, so that they don't have, because they're busy. And I get these guys all the time. They're like, look, dude, I heard you on a show, I heard you on a podcast or something. And, they've stuck around long enough. Whatever I said worked for them 2 or 3 times. Now that there's a trust there, and they're counting on me to do that. So I do it for myself anyway, but to me, it's a very big responsibility to take the time, and a lot of people just don't have it. I mean, they're raising kids and they got their business and whatever they're doing. They don't have as much time as so I've actually made this lifestyle into a business, basically testing things, trying to get to the root and find out who's BSing me and who's not. Because there's really good marketers out there, they can sell stuff. I mean, it's just the way it is.
When you start with a new patient, do you generally do like lab tests and things, or do you just go off of symptoms and then try some things out?
Yeah. So what we do is they will fill out what's called a health history form, and then we do a free 30-minute consultation with them. And we're kind of the people that just kind of meet you where you're at and kind of get you incubated. I'm not a doctor. We don't claim to. My coaches were not, but we're health coaches. We've all, went through things. We've healed ourselves, and we're kind of chefs and fitness people now, and so we just do the basics, and we get people on fundamentals. And oddly as enough as it sounds, 95% of people are not drinking enough water. And what water they are drinking is polluted. So we just teach them how to get clean, structured water and make sure they're drinking adequate amounts of it. And then inflammation starts going down. They start feeling better. They start having better bowel movements. 94 or 96% of people are not chewing their food well enough. And that's the first step of digestion. That's where a lot of enzymes get loaded into the food from the glands in the mouth. And we, teach people to do that. We get them to avoid liquids with meals.
I just learned about this. I always wondered, I thought to myself, if I'm drinking while eating, which for whatever reason I naturally want to do, is it like mixing everything up in my stomach and making it, I learned that it makes it harder for your stomach to produce the stomach acid, which you need to, to digest. Is that your understanding too?
Well, if you go back to the second thing I just mentioned, which was chewing your food, you secrete these. You have 2 ducts in your upper mouth and 4 in the lower mouth that secrete these enzymes called amylase and lipase that digest your starches and your fats. And, the proteins are going to get digested by hydrochloric acid and pepsin in the stomach. So let's say you chew your food really, really good now because you heard about this. Now you're going to get digestion and assimilation of nutrients much better. But if you drink the best water ever, or wine, or beer, or coffee, or apple juice, or any liquids, you're going to dilute those digestive enzymes in the stomach. And you go from digestion and assimilation back to fermentation and gut rot. And it's not like it's really bad once in a while here and there, but when you're doing it breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, eventually it's going to wear down your digestive tract. And you're going to probably end up with what people have. It's called leaky gut. You start getting these little microscopic tears in the intestinal lining, and all of a sudden undigested food particles and microbes start slipping into the blood. And then it can show up as whatever, it could show up as all kinds of different issues. Like I said, Graves' disease, colitis, Crohn's, migraines. It could be anything. Everybody has a predisposition to weakness as the immune system starts breaking down. So we just try to teach people these basic things. We usually put them on some of our products. We're really big on far infrared saunas because far infrared is the vibrational frequency of water in nature. We're mostly water. And those things help not only detox people, melt fat.
If you have a website, why don't you go ahead and plug that? We're coming up on a break here. We can hold you over if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the website's chemicalfreebody.com.
Chemicalfreebody.com?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's it.
Awesome. This is Free Talk Live. Give us a call, 603-283-6160.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating US dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. But what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. The US Secretary of State says Washington will walk away from efforts to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine unless there are clear signs of progress in the coming days. Marco Rubio was speaking after attending talks with Ukraine, France, Germany and the UK in the French capital. Ross Cullen reports.
The United States Secretary of State issued a stark warning to European allies and Ukraine that unless there is real progress towards a peace deal between Kiev and Moscow in the coming days, then, quote, I think we're just going to move on. Marco Rubio said, we're not going to continue with this endeavour for weeks and months on end. He was speaking after the first in-person talks between the US, Ukraine, the UK, France and Germany ahead of further meetings scheduled in London next week. Ross Cullen, Paris.
US President Donald Trump has expressed 100% confidence that the United States will reach a trade deal with the European Union. His comments came as he hosted Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni at the White House, the first European leader to visit Washington since Trump brought in 20% tariffs on the EU, then paused them earlier this month. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
The Italian Prime Minister also voiced optimism about securing a trade deal with the US, and she invited President Trump to meetings in Italy to advance those talks. Giorgia Meloni shares a warmer relationship with the president than other EU leaders. She was the only EU leader to attend Donald Trump's inauguration earlier this year, and he heaped praise on her ahead of their meeting, saying she had taken Europe by storm. She said her goal is to make the West great again. Ms. Meloni has a tightrope to walk between representing the interests of the EU and remaining in the US president's good books. Kate Fisher, Washington.
At least 3 people have died and dozens injured after a severe hailstorm and torrential rain battered Islamabad. With Pakistan ranked as the 5th most climate vulnerable country globally, experts are sounding an alarm over worsening weather patterns and demanding the government urgently scale up climate adaptation measures. Hira Mustafa reports.
Eyewitnesses have described hailstones the size of golf balls pelting Pakistan's capital city of Islamabad. Some northern provinces have also reported flooding. The violent storm swept through the capital and northwestern parts of Pakistan on Wednesday, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Officials say there has been significant damage to solar panels, vehicles, and residential properties. In 2022, widespread flooding linked to climate change left 1/3 of the country submerged. This year, the country is seeing record heat waves with temperature at least 7 degrees above normal. Hira Mustafa, Islamabad.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio you control. Give us a call, get your thoughts on the air. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. And Free Talk Live is brought to you by LibertyMinded.com. Official Free Talk Live gear like t-shirts and hoodies are available at LibertyMinded.com. Plus, you'll find a unique collection of cool and funny liberty-oriented clothing at LibertyMinded.com. That's LibertyMinded.com. In the studio tonight, it's Stu,
Riley,
and Bonnie.
And the point of this show, as always, is the phone. So we've got a caller. Gigi in South Carolina, you're on Free Talk Live.
The first one on a Saturday night. I love it.
We had a caller already,
evening,
but
everybody.
welcome anyways.
Hello.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Gigi.
For all of our listeners across the U.S. of A., happy Passover. Have a healthy Easter tomorrow. Mrs. Freeman, I wish you and Ian a wonderful visit tomorrow together. And I hope little Coconut is doing better.
Thank you. Oh, he's fine. The thing is, basically, I was just telling Ian, that I wanted to get a second opinion on how many teeth he needs removed, but he's a Chihuahua. At this age, they lose a lot of teeth. And I've just been giving him milk, brushing his teeth even more often, putting coconut oil on his gums, and then I'm going to go to the second opinion and really hope that they're like, yeah, the last people were just being dramatic, you know. So I hope so.
I compliment you for taking care of your pet because
Thank
it's
you.
like a child. And it says you and I are indeed soulmates, two Jewish mothers.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, I would like to make a comment, and as always, That's why I love Free Talk Live, because of the mission statement. All opinions are welcome, and I value that about this program. Let's hear it for due process in the good old U.S. of A. All week we've seen and heard on the radio news, read it online, in local papers, and on television, all the different news programs reporting on the lack and violation repeatedly, continuously, and consistently of due process. Somebody listening out there, please call in and tell me, teach me, mentor me, guide me. How is it that the executive branch is continuously violating separation of powers and constitutionally guaranteed civil liberties, one of which is due process? And somebody please teach me, guide me, mentor me, tutor me. Where in our Constitution does it distinguish in verbiage green card holder, U.S. citizen, foreign student on a legitimate visa? Somebody help me.
I can explain all this for you. So,
please. I've got a PhD and I have a legal background and I'm married to a lawyer. And of course I'm saying that facetiously, not to be unladylike.
Let me give this a shot. Today is the anniversary of Waco and the Oklahoma City bombing. Both events are pretty obvious that the government is guilty of mishandling the situation, to put it as lightly as I possibly can.
Right.
And nobody did anything. And so that's why they can just run around and just flaunt due process. So there's the answer to that.
No one's going to stand up and say, this is wrong. I mean, they may stand up for it in the media, but no one's going to take over the executive branch and drag Trump into the street, are they?
That's right. America has become fearful and won't stand up for themselves. That's the answer to the first. The answer to the second about the Constitution is there are plenty of loopholes and outs for them to do whatever they want, such as in Article 6, where it says all they have to do is make a treaty with the UN, and then suddenly Gigi in South Carolina is subject to everything the UN wants to do.
Well, the other thing that came to mind was the Supremacy Clause, and how if anything has to do with crossing borders, they just say that that is now federal, so like states can't say, no, you can't take our illegal aliens out of our states, really, because the government's going to say, nope, that crosses borders, and now we're in charge. We have jurisdiction. And I'm not saying that's right or good, and I really think they abuse it. That's just like something that they constantly claim.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, she also brought up the executive kind of stepping on the other branches, and I don't know why they get away with it, because you would think that the other branches would do something about it, but like you said, but the thing is, why would they do something about it? I think they're all in lockstep together doing things against us. It's like they see us as them and us, them versus us, not branch versus branch, in my opinion. I think they're working together.
Yeah, they consider themselves actors in the play, and that we're all just kind of, fill-ins, or what do they call them?
Extras.
Yeah, extras. And so they ultimately are writing the script, and most of us unwittingly fall in line and play the part that they wrote for us. But as far as the executive stuff goes, there's pretty good evidence that let's see, dig into my memory bank. This was for the Waco massacre. I believe there was a box of evidence that Hillary Clinton wanted to see as the first lady, and it was brought to her and suddenly never seen again. A box of Waco stuff from the guy that was in charge of it, directly out of his office. So
the Clintons are covering things up.
Yeah, I know. Surprise, right?
Yeah, surprise, surprise.
Yeah. So it looks like Gigi hung up, but I don't know how I was hoping to hear how she thought I did on answering her questions. If you have something to call in about, the phone number is 603-283-6010. 6160. Like I said before, today's the anniversary of the Waco massacre and the Oklahoma City Murrah building bombing, in which so let's talk about Oklahoma City for a minute. They say like one guy pulled up in front of the building in a Ryder truck and blew half the front of the building off, and that's how the story stands. But if you look into it, there were multiple explosions that day, as reported by more than one eyewitness, and people who have looked at the damage to the building and everything have pretty much come to the conclusion that was not that truck bomb was not the extent of what happened. There was no way a truck full of ANFO was going to do that to a building.
Half of the building was
Right.
just destroyed, like a large building.
And I heard an interview with it. I forgot the man's name. I wish I could remember right now, but he had developed basically a top secret bomb that had a dual detonation, sort of like a 2-stage detonation, right? Which falls in line with the way the bomb went that day, where there was one explosion and right around, I think, 4.5 or 5 seconds later, another much larger explosion. And when the guy...
So the guy interviewed also made one, and he was talking about...
No, he was the guy that developed it, and he was able to tell by the signature of it that somebody had used his bomb to blow that building up, or at least he thought so.
Whoa.
And and there was, if you look at the local news reports, there was, they were saying that there were disarming bombs after the front of the building got blown off, and so which doesn't jive with the current narrative, the official narrative. So there's a lot of fishy stuff there, and you could look into it for a very long time. There's plenty of evidence of cover-ups, and the other event that stands out in my mind today is the massacre that happened at Waco. And
still, the argument could be made that they're just a bunch of religious nuts, and we had to take care of them. Otherwise, they'd be bringing their insanity to the rest of the world.
I think I heard a news clip from that day where a news personality actually referred to a 2-year-old as a cult member.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, one thing about it is they didn't say they were going in to save children. They actually used gun laws. They were saying, oh, well, the Waco people that was their thing. They got maybe not a warrant. I don't know if there was a warrant involved, but that's what they went in for. They're ostensibly there for gun things. Like, oh, the Waco people own guns and we can't allow that, like,
That's
illegally.
Right. And then they started a standoff, and then it escalated to the point where they used the excuse that there were children inside. They were worried for the welfare of the children.
So we got to catch them on fire.
And so we have to use tanks to punch holes in the building and fill it with poisonous gas because that's smart. So I personally have looked into this, and I don't believe those people burned themselves to death. I believe they were murdered by fire and gunfire. And
yeah, I would believe that they were murdered too.
I believe they were for 51 days absolutely terrorized by the U.S. government, who probably shot holes in their water tanks and at one point called for a ceasefire to recover their dead and wounded, and would not extend the same to the people inside that were trapped there.
Yeah.
And not only that, but for 51 days, they could have walked up and arrested the leader of that place, David, that went by the name David Koresh. He changed his name to that. They could have arrested him at any point, but they chose not to. They chose to escalate until it got to a massacre.
In the United States, the FBI used a weapon against the Davidians, the people at Waco, on the last day to just get it over with, I guess. That's banned in warfare.
That's right. And nobody did anything. Like, everybody was just stoked that they got those cult members down there.
It's interesting you say nobody did anything, because Timothy McVeigh, the guy who did the Oklahoma City bombing, he said that he was there because the government needs to be afraid of the people. But honestly, I think I think that in and of itself is a psyop. He was portrayed in the media as somebody who's mad about Waco. He was mad about the government doing things like Waco, and that's why he went and blew up a federal building. But I think that it was just all to make people who even think that there ever could be an instance where violence is acceptable, like, the Revolutionary War people believed, make them look crazy and bad because, he was mad about Waco, but when Timothy McVeigh blew up that building, he also killed children. Well, just innocent people in general, plus children.
That's right.
As innocent as a federal government employee can be.
Yep. The highly respected founding fathers of this country would be labeled terrorists for sure today.
Yep.
For inciting insurrection.
Yeah.
So I think they kind of do stuff like that where they make someone like that, or what's his name, Ted
Kaczynski?
Yes, thank you. And they make it look like, look, this guy's a crazed murderer who is mad about the government, and look how crazy he is, and then they can make stories about it, and also they get a blood sacrifice out of it, and of course they love that. And I just think that an actual smart way to think about the way the government is doing things is, first of all, recognize that you need to break away as much as you humanly possibly can first. Just quit being dependent on them in any possible way that you can start doing so, and there's probably tons of ways. At this point, the only taxes I pay at all in the state of New Hampshire, like if I travel, it's more complicated, but are if I buy from a restaurant, there's meals and room tax to the state of New Hampshire, then the gas, you have to pay taxes for the roads, and that's New Hampshire, I think, might be federal. And then, but at least it doesn't go to bombs, it goes to the roads, I think. Yeah. And then property tax, but really that's
there's no way you can totally avoid being taxed in this country.
And cell phones. So I've got my taxation down to 4 things.
Right. Yeah, so many taxes have been put in automatically, and they're collected before you can do anything about it. That, or they're backed by the threat of taking, some very important things away.
I guess that's a good point. Like, sometimes I'll buy something and maybe I won't be paying the tax, but the company who supplied it to me had to pay like a value-added tax or something like that.
Right.
It's hard to avoid any sort of taxation for sure, and so breaking away from the federal government would be a good step in saying we're done with your federal taxes, and that might reduce the tax burden a little bit.
Exactly. It's not just paying taxes. There's tons of ways you can try to break away from the government. Also, I would say, talking about what the first caller talked about, he runs a regenerative farm. You don't have to go that far if you don't want, but at least support small farms instead of supporting the corporation, government, bootlicking major food corporations that are poisoning you and destroying the soil and killing people. Like he was mentioning all those people that die every day of, in my opinion, metabolic diseases that they wouldn't have ever gotten if they weren't being fed poison. And the thing is we're not even just being fed it. It's in the skies, it's in the soil, it's in the water.
Yeah, we're being poisoned to that for sure.
Yep. And I totally agree. And it starts with changing your mind, really, about what it is you're willing to put up with in this world and what's right and what's wrong. And it's not, these things are not that complicated. Stealing is wrong. I think we all know that. I think we've all had something stolen from us that made us feel pretty bad. Or we've seen the effect of it somewhere.
I think that kids know that, but somehow they rationalize it as they get older that it's somehow okay to steal sometimes.
Yeah, and it's not. And that's exactly what's gone on a larger level, where people think it's okay to have, their fellow humans enslaved under the guise of something that they want to call government or democracy or whatever word they want to use. It's human slavery, and it needs to stop. And it all does start with the change of a mind, and courage is, it's like a muscle. You got to work it out. You got to start small, and it can be turned around. These things can be relearned by people if they so choose. They might have to have their backs pushed up against the wall a little harder, though.
I think intention is super important if you want to change your mind and you don't know where to start. Because it's like there's so much information out there. We were talking on the break about homeopathy, And I said, the thing about it is like, I've looked into it, and it's like, there's so much conflicting stuff. I don't even know where to start. But I think that if I just intended, like, I'm going to open my mind to it and find the right things. Okay, forget homeopathy. In 10th grade, I think, I read 1984 just because I always heard, like, that's a book you should read. Everyone should read it. I just read it myself. And when I was reading it, I remember, like, I wasn't even done reading it. I closed it, and I'm just sitting there, I'm thinking, how do I know what's right, like Winston? How do I know to end up on the right side of things? Like, not just go with whatever I feel like or whatever somebody else has told me. How do I know what is actually right so I can make sure I'm on the right side of things? And I was like, well, I think I prayed. I was just like, help me to always make sure that I'm on the right side of things, and at least like how to learn what is right. That's actually exactly what I said. And I think that once you set that intention, it might not happen overnight, but things will just start clicking. I think that intention is so important in almost anything you want to do at all.
I think so too. And I think in a world where a lot of us have been confused about what's right and what's wrong, a good indicator is, does it cause suffering or does it reduce suffering? And that's a good starting point. And then if you're worried about finding the truth of these things, the truth is just that which doesn't contradict. So start looking for the contradictions, and then, build your best evidence towards the truth.
I think that a lot of kids will steal from another kid and not care. So somebody might say, what do you mean kids know that? But the thing is, like, a kid knows when something has been done to them that's wrong. They may not even have the emotional maturity to know when something is done to someone else that's wrong, but as they get older, they put that together. Wait, if I feel this when this bad thing happens to me, then that person feels that too, and they understand that it's wrong to inflict that on someone else. But then somebody's gonna program that out of them, like, it's okay to sometimes inflict suffering on someone if it's for the greater good, like something very nebulous like that you don't know exactly what it means.
Supposed criminal.
Yeah, if they're a criminal.
Yep, or a psychopath.
Or not from your community.
Yeah, well, that is one characteristics of humans, that they're easily programmed, and the logic can be pretty scrambled up pretty easily, as is evidenced by today's college student on average. It doesn't mean that they're all dumb, but they've all got, the majority of them have some pretty wild ideas about how the world works, and and they think they're going to make a difference, but they're just parroting the lines that have been fed down to them from think tanks and globalist groups like World Economic Forum.
College professors can be a big programming agent for college students.
Well, the college professors are just spouting what they've heard from from the smartest people talking in the world, right? It's always the smartest guy in the room. It's always an appeal to authority of some kind.
Yeah.
And if they can point to, if you got a room full of professors pointing at this one guy giving a lecture as being the smartest guy in the room, everybody's going to believe that, because it's because of the lab coat effect. Which experiment was it where they wanted to see how far they could get people to go in administering electric shocks?
It was a Milgram experiment.
That's right. And they didn't think they'd get anybody to go very far, but they were shocked to find out they got a lot of people to go really
Most
far
people
with it. Yeah.
would go to the point of harming the other person on the other side who was getting electroshocked, so they thought.
Right. Some people even to the point of deadly voltage.
Yep. Just because the person in a lab coat told them to.
The experiment must continue.
Yep, that was the line he was told to use, and he wasn't even a real doctor. Just wanted to see what would happen, and there wasn't somebody actually being shocked on the other side, but they sure were screaming like they were, and then they went silent when the voltage got too high, leading some people to believe that they had actually killed somebody.
I think that it's been said that it's too unethical to do anymore, but if it was done today, I bet it'd be like 100%, especially if you made sure you just got it from the general population, and most people are public schooled, even private schooled. If you're sending your kids to school at 5 years old, kids should be reading way before 5 years old. So the fact that people think it's necessary to send your kids away from home for kindergarten at 5 years old is really insane to me. It's like, well, they got to learn to read. You should have taught them to read when they were like 3 or maybe even sooner.
That's right. Yep. And that's been going on for generations where, that's what they said about the JFK thing is it doesn't matter that we totally did it because nobody reads. So they're not going to find out.
They said that?
I forgot who said that. It was, I'm paraphrasing, obviously.
It's true that people just don't read.
It was a higher up government official that was being asked about, government cover-ups, and maybe it had to do with Watergate or something like that. It was something where they were obviously dirty, and they said they were being asked about it, and they just said, Americans don't read, so I got nothing to worry about.
I think it was Watergate. Go ahead, Riley, sorry.
I'm still waiting on the Epstein list, but apparently it hasn't dropped yet, so...
Yep, really weird stuff with that. Like, Trump was saying he's going to release it. I don't know if he said day one, but he said he's going to release it, and then the FBI gets it for a few days, and then they just release something that's like a bunch of nonsense or a bunch of stuff not the Epstein list that everybody's waiting for, and now it's on Pam Bondi's desk, and she's working on it, and then it's like, now the paper, like I heard Alex Jones say, now the papers have gone to an FBI field office in New York, and they're working on what they need to redact or whatever, then it's going to come out. It's like, oh, and then next week we're going to hear it's another week, Yeah.
And they're framing this as like it's interagency problems or like somebody's trying to mess with Trump or like but
that's a good point,
when it's not the case. They're all doing WWE. This is very scripted and they know exactly what they're doing.
They're playing us for a pack of fools.
It kind of worries me the way that Alex Jones is just like so in lockstep with the Trump stuff because I've recently listened to some of his older documentaries and the way he talked about like, all of the presidents. Okay, he used to be one of the people who said, we haven't had a real president since JFK, then they murdered him, and now it's all globalists, and we'll never get a government president again that's not a globalist unless, they get completely taken down, and now he's like acting like Trump is on, quote-unquote, our team. It is honestly kind of...
Yeah, that is really strange to me. It's really hypocritical.
I hope he hasn't been replaced.
What do you think? Give us a call. 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. The US Secretary of State says Washington will walk away from efforts to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine unless there are clear signs of progress in the coming days. Marco Rubio was speaking after attending talks with Ukraine, France, Germany and the UK in the French capital. Ross Cullen reports.
The United States Secretary of State issued a stark warning to European allies and Ukraine that unless there is real progress towards a peace deal between Kyiv and Moscow in the coming days, then, quote, I think we're just going to move on. Marco Rubio said, we're not going to continue with this endeavour for weeks and months on end. He was speaking after the first in-person talks between the US, Ukraine, the UK, France and Germany ahead of further meetings scheduled in London next week. Ross Cullen, Paris.
US President Donald Trump has expressed 100% confidence that the United States will reach a trade deal with the European Union. His comments came as he hosted Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni at the White House, the first European leader to visit Washington since Trump brought in 20% tariffs on the EU, then paused them earlier this month. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
The Italian Prime Minister also voiced optimism about securing a trade deal with the US, and she invited President Trump to meetings in Italy to advance those talks. Giorgia Meloni shares a warmer relationship with the president than other EU leaders. She was the only EU leader to attend Donald Trump's inauguration earlier this year, and he heaped praise on her ahead of their meeting, saying she had taken Europe by storm. She said her goal is to make the West great again. Ms. Meloni has a tightrope to walk between representing the interests of the EU and remaining in the US president's good books. Kate Fisher, Washington.
And the Trump administration says it will appeal a federal judge's order to provide sworn testimony over its efforts it made to return a man mistakenly deported to El Salvador. The Supreme Court has called on it to facilitate Kilma Abrego Garcia's return to the US, upholding a court order by the judge. The White House claims he had ties to the criminal gang MS-13, though his lawyers say there's no evidence of that. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is defending his deportation.
He was illegally inside our country and had a lawful deportation order made him subject to removal back to his home country of El Salvador. And if he ever ends up back in the United States, he would immediately be deported again.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. At least 3 people have died and dozens injured after a severe hailstorm and torrential rain battered Islamabad. With Pakistan ranked as the 5th most climate-vulnerable country globally, experts are sounding an alarm over worsening weather patterns and demanding the government urgently scale up climate adaptation measures. Hira Mustafa reports.
Eyewitnesses have described hailstones the size of golf balls pelting Pakistan's capital city of Islamabad. Some northern provinces have also reported flooding. The violent storm swept through the capital and northwestern parts of Pakistan on Wednesday, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Officials say there has been significant damage to solar panels, vehicles, and residential properties. In 2022, widespread flooding linked to climate change left 1/3 of the country submerged. This year, the country is seeing record heat waves with temperature at least 7 degrees above normal. Environmentalists blame climate change and shifting monsoon patterns, urging authorities to adopt climate-resilient policies. Hira Mustafa, Islamabad.
A federal judge has ruled that Google broke antitrust laws by maintaining an illegal monopoly in the digital advertising space. The decision could force major changes to one of the tech giant's biggest revenue streams. Ira Spitzer reports.
A U.S. district judge has found Google guilty of using its dominance in online advertising to block rivals and limit choice for advertisers and publishers. The Justice Department says Google acquired competitors and tied key products together, leaving much of the industry dependent on its tools. The judge said Google's conduct violated the Sherman Antitrust Act and caused substantial harm to both competition and consumers. While the company plans to appeal, the Justice Department may now push to break up Google's ad business entirely. This is the second time in under a year that a federal court has called Google an illegal monopolist. Ira Spitzer, San Francisco.
I'm Caroline Malone in Washington, and that was The Week in Review.
Following this afternoon's arrest of Congress on the charge of over 23 million counts of manslaughter, our reporter spoke to Mark Westnick from Savannah, Georgia, just one of the many Americans that has lost a loved one due to the legislative branch's criminal negligence.
Because of Congress, my 23-year-old son died 2 years ago in Afghanistan. My nephew, he lost his leg in Iraq in 2006, and my brother died in Vietnam in 1969. Congress killed my family.
Defense attorneys for the now incarcerated 538-member group have dismissed the claims made by Westnick and other victims and released a statement saying their client has been, quote, a pillar of the national community for over 200 years and completely innocent of any and all wrongdoing. Keep checking theonion.com for more as this story develops.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live, talk radio you control. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. We've got open phones for you to call in and get your thoughts on the air. Now, I'd like to thank Thomas for being an amplifier with us here at Free Talk Live. That means that Thomas went to amps.freetalklive.com and signed up to support the show. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. Thanks again to Thomas and everyone who supports us. Again, that's amps.freetalklive.com if you'd like to check out the perks and benefits of becoming an amplifier. In the studio tonight, it's Stu,
Riley,
and Bonnie.
And we have a caller on the line. We're going to go to the phones. Unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live.
Would you steal a penny to save the world? This is why utilitarianism
that would never happen.
Is the only thing that makes sense, right?
That would never be a situation.
It doesn't matter.
That's not.
It does matter.
It does matter. That's all that matters.
It's actually funny you say it doesn't matter because matter means reality.
The whole nation dwindles.
Here we go with the chicken interrupting.
That's horrible, Riley.
But that's Skeeter's
you
theory
can
of
hypothetically
utilitarianism,
think of You can think of hypotheticals where it could happen.
That's why I say reduce harm versus increase harm, or suffering rather, because
just answer the question.
stealing a penny is not going to cause much harm, whereas the destruction of the world causes all the harm, right? So obviously, I'm going to do the one that causes less harm.
Oh, so you're utilitarian. You would
sometimes harm is caused, and then at that point, it's your responsibility to make the person whole. So that means I owe somebody a penny.
The cause didn't come from any of your actions. The stealing of the penny did.
Yeah, and that means I owe somebody a penny.
Moral? What's that?
And that means I owe somebody a penny, and I'm probably going to pay that back.
Sometimes you just do something wrong on accident, too. It's not like it's an instant thing. It's not like instantly a piano falls on your head if you do something wrong. That's not how, like, karma works.
I'm talking about
you can still make it right afterwards, like Stu was saying.
Right. We all do things willfully that are wrong. It's a matter of making it right afterwards.
Retarded.
No, it's actually not.
Let me just get one thing straight, right? Restitution
Why is restitution
retarded? Because it's sunk cost fallacy. If you're trying to maximize utility,
making somebody whole for the damage they've received is retarded.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
It's sunk cost fallacy. So
we
here's
could
the
take
thing,
a poll
right?
on that. I think you'd lose.
You're brainwashed into believing this. You're brainwashed into believing in restitution because we already live in a society that promotes it. It's hard to think of a market system that doesn't have restitution because, number one, restitution is, number one, sunk cost fallacy. Number two, it causes moral hazard. When
if somebody stole something from me and I want it back and then I get it back, that's not sunken cost. Like, oh, you needed your thing back. You don't actually need that back. It's just sunken cost. No, it's not. I didn't put it into anything. I didn't purposely put it in to like go invest in something and then decide that I have to keep doing it. That's what you don't even, it's like you don't even know what that means. Sunken cost is I can't pull out of this because I have to continue to lose money on this because of the fact that I already put money in, so I got to continue to lose money or waste my time or whatever it is. That's sunken cost fallacy.
Yeah. And not only that,
they're not the same thing.
I'd like to know who you think programmed me with the notion of restitution, because I can tell you where my ideas of it came from.
It's mainly the current culture, right? We already
that's not even true. I don't think most people believe that. Most people believe send him to jail. Every time somebody does something wrong, you hear, I hope he never smells fresh air again and stuff like that. Right now, culture is all about going to jail, not about restitution.
No, we have what's tort law, Bonnie? What's tort law?
You didn't say, is there a law that lets something happen sometimes? You said, what is culture? What is the most common thing that everybody talks about? Like, we're asking, how could Stu be programmed with that? Do you think Stu was a kid and he was like, tort law? You're stupid.
And not only that, but they don't participate in restitution.
He knows growing up. He watches people's court, right? He sees courts.
I never did. I never watched any of that court stuff. I didn't get interested in court at all until I was an adult.
I watched a little bit of Judge Wapner.
Well, I'm just saying the average person, you can't necessarily say that.
But it's sunk cost fallacy with respect to maximizing utility. You don't look at the past.
Okay, define sunken cost fallacy because you obviously don't know what you're talking about. Tell us what you think sunken cost fallacy is.
Is when you look at past things that don't matter in maximizing utility. Like who owned a piece of property in the past?
I don't think you're right. It doesn't matter. Just because something's in the past. It's like somebody stole my daughter and she's been kidnapped. That's in the past, Bonnie. If you want her back, it doesn't matter anymore. You're stupid.
How do you know that? How do you know your daughter wouldn't prosper with the person who kidnapped her?
What kind of lunacy?
Because she's my property.
No, not every kidnapper might be a rapist, right?
You are absolutely out of your mind,
Skeeter. Good intentions. The kidnapper could have good intentions with the kid.
Right? I think that most parents are the people that should be with their kids. I know that there are definitely cases where they're not.
Didn't Peakless kidnap a kid?
Peakless? No. You don't know what you're talking about with that. No, that is not what happened. Peakless did not kidnap any kid. No.
I don't know anything about this story.
Let's say there's this parent who refuses to teach the kid math and reading, right? That's their choice since they own the kid, right, Bonnie?
That's absolutely their choice.
You disagree with it. So
I never said I disagree with that. I'm not saying that like I would ever go up to somebody and say like that's child abuse or you shouldn't do that if they have actual like good reason for why they're doing other things. Some people didn't learn it right away. Like I think that the average, if I had a kid, I would definitely teach them reading and math. And I wouldn't just let them not ever know that stuff. But that doesn't mean that there's not some situation where a parent is actually right. Their kid has other things that they should worry about more.
Sure.
You've never had the conversation about kids with me, apparently, because I believe that children are their parents' property until they're old enough to assert their own.
Oh, you do? Oh, wow. So
I'm the only one on the show that believes that.
It's not really a thing. So who determines when the kid totally owns himself?
The parent and the kid together.
Did you figure that out, Bunny? Huh? No, oh, wait. Well, wait, how does that?
Because the kid asserts themselves and then the parent recognizes it. And it happens every single day. And it's just like, you think the government is inside everyone's houses determining when the kid's allowed to hold a knife? No. The parents and the kid determine that together. The kid starts to assert themselves, and then the parent recognizes it, and then one day the kid's holding a knife, and then one day the kid has a job, and then one day the kid moves out. No government necessary.
That's a dangerous idea, Bonnie.
I don't care if you think so.
What happens
we're a show about dangerous ideas, dude. That's what we do here. We're dangerous people.
What happens when there's a disagreement between the parent and the kid? So the kid.
I can explain this. I can explain this pretty easily.
The kid wants to have an orgy, right? The parent says, "No, I don't think you're ready yet." 21 goes by, right? They still want to have an orgy. The parent says, "No."
You think a 20-year-old, 1-year-old, the average 21-year-old couldn't actually assert themselves to leave? That's ridiculous.
Who determines that? What about a retard?
I just told you there's no determination. And the thing with retarded people is some of them never gain all autonomy. And that's just a human fact. There are tons of people who are retarded, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, who actually have to have people take care of their basic needs because they can't themselves. So that is just proof of what I'm saying.
Who determines the dispute? I'm asking you.
This is a boring conversation because I already answered that.
All right. That's enough of that. Skeeter, to answer that last point you were pathetically trying to make there, The the difference between the tyranny of the family and the tyranny of the state is that one exists naturally. You're born to your parents, deal with it. This whole government thing is a notion that people have come up with and put in a place that's wholly unnatural.
I agree with that. I saw somebody saying yesterday, because there was somebody on the internet saying that Ray Peat was a communist, and I don't even believe that he was a communist. There are no direct quotes that are like, "Oh, this just proved he was a communist." But in his patent, when he patented progesterone, he wrote that he wants to have it to where anyone can make products using his patent, because he straight up said the free market will encourage new ideas and make it more widely available and cheaper for people. He wrote that in his patent. So he's not a communist, and there are people that say he is. But anyways, somebody was arguing that Ray Peat was a communist. I argued back a little, and then somebody in support of it underneath said, in support of me, I guess, or in support of against communism is what I'm trying to say, said that the difference is that the kind of tyranny of a family is not scalable. And I kind of think that makes sense.
That's right. It has natural limits there.
It really does, yeah. Like, my dad can't come to New Hampshire and tell Bonnie what to do.
Right. And once you've gained the capacity to break yourself free of that family, you get to choose a new family in this world. And that's one of the most beautiful things of life that it possibly offers to us. Right now, we've got a caller on the line. On the screen, caller, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hello, man.
Yep.
Fuck.
Oh, well, that was lame. That was a pretty dumb one.
That was
really bad. Like, that wasn't even... He didn't even try. Like, sometimes, I mean, at least if they say the N-word, it's like, you don't get to say that. You don't even usually get to say that.
Yeah.
You said a word that's like basically acceptable in public now. Good for you.
Yeah, you'd probably just get to hear that word on, like regular
Twitch
television programming in 3 to 5 years, I would guess.
There was an episode where South Park said the S word like 400 times or something.
None of the FM radio listeners heard it, though, so
yeah,
I don't know. And even when people have called in with just something as amateur as saying the N-word, a couple of times they've gotten me to laugh just because of the way they did, or like just it seemed silly. They've at least gotten a chuckle. That one wasn't worth anything.
Nope. That was lame.
So Bonnie, you've got a news story, I think, that you said you wanted to read.
Yes, this is something from Colorado, and they're passing a law. I think they did pass the law, and it's a gun control law that's going to make it harder to reload. Really, really bad stuff. It says first of its kind legislation could reshape, so I guess that means it hasn't passed yet, national gun control debate, as gun rights groups say it will ban America's most popular firearms. Dang it. I gotta sign in really fast.
Oh, yeah, no problem. They've been on a tear to ban firearms. I think this is another thing that comes from the, the globalist agenda, so to speak.
Or the government-loving agenda, where they think that words scribbled on magic paper are suddenly going to ban guns and people aren't going to be killing people with guns. But I hate to break it to the listeners, people can manufacture guns, they can manufacture bombs, they can manufacture pretty much anything. The law can't be in your bedroom at night, so you can't prevent people from creating guns and using guns.
No, they really can't.
Yeah,
they can only scare people into voluntarily giving them up, as they have done in like Australia.
Yeah,
for example.
When you ban criminals from having guns, only the criminals will have the guns.
Yeah, that's the way that goes. But if you think about it, if you're a global planner and you're trying to institute global governance, and you're going to institute some programs that might not go down so well, meaning the people that have to deal with it aren't going to like it at all, you probably don't want those people to have guns. And I think that's where the push comes from, to get rid of American regular people having firearms.
I honestly really believe that the only reason that certain states versus other states, but also America versus most other countries, wasn't so bad with the lockdowns is because Americans have guns.
Yep. We've got possibly another crank caller on the line, but we've got on-screen callers You're on Free Talk Live.
Hey guys, it was me the last time. I'm sorry.
Well, you don't get another call. Sorry.
Yeah, you don't get 2 calls per night. That's. We've got another caller on the line. Let's see how this one goes. On-screen caller, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yes, I was reading about that particular law in Colorado. At least I think. Were you referring to the one that had a provision in it that would require magazines to be literally welded or soldered to a firearm?
Yes, it's that one.
Oh, that's remarkably idiotic. This is kind of where I break with a lot of people on the left. Well, not really so much the left, but a lot of liberals despise me for this. I'm not inherently anti-gun. I'm not anti-gun control either. It depends on the gun control provision, but I find the idea of restricting firearms to that degree to be wholly incompatible with the Second Amendment and Supreme Court precedent on the matter. And I don't understand how that could possibly prevent anybody from shooting up a mall or a school or anything else like that. That seems very draconian. In fact, I think it may be the only time a state has ever considered having a fixed magazine. Although I believe in California, some variants of ARs require something similar. I'm not necessarily
I think
sure.
I heard California has something in place like that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. I was going to comment on something you had said, Stu, or maybe it was Riley a couple of minutes ago. I don't necessarily like the argument that gun laws are innately useless because criminals will still break the law. That never made any sense to me because that's kind of the case with any law, is it not?
Pretty
and
much.
Second of all, I'm not really afraid of criminals with guns. Like my home state, where I no longer reside, passed. I'm not sure if New Hampshire has it. It's permitless carries for firearms. Like any citizen can just buy a gun and carry it.
It's just constitutional carry here. I'm not sure about all the different names, but yeah, anybody can have a gun. You don't need a license. You don't need to ask to buy a new gun.
Yeah, I've always had some contentions with that. When that was proposed back in Ohio, I had an issue with it. And one of the common arguments given to me was always, well, criminals are going to carry guns anyway. That was never really my concern. My concern was citizens, average citizens carrying guns that don't know very much about them, don't know how to use them, and aren't very well trained in self-defense matters, deciding to take the law into their own hands and kill somebody who didn't deserve it. Same with stand your ground laws. A good example was the case in Arizona where there was a driver who noticed a 22-year-old or some young kid had cut him off, and they got into a bit of a road rage spat. And the younger kid decided to flap his hands up, and the older gentleman said, well, I thought he had a gun, gunned him down, and got away with it. That's what I'm afraid with more people carrying guns. I don't necessarily believe in them outside of the home or outside of home defense by and large without substantial training. And I don't understand how getting more guns onto the street would create less crime. That's a bit like saying more flamethrowers will cause less fires.
Well, one bad guy can only use one gun at a time. I mean, kind of two, but less effectively.
Well, it certainly doesn't help in a self-defense situation, right? If you have a mass shooting, for example.
That's not the point. That's not the point of the Second Amendment. It's not about home defense or personal defense. It's about keeping tyranny in check.
Yeah, that doesn't even make sense at all.
Well,
never has. The Second Amendment makes it very clear: a well-regulated militia. And I say this as somebody who owns quite a few firearms.
Right, but the militia's not going to do anything against a street thug. What is a militia for?
State defense. I don't think the Second Amendment was actually, in fact, up to the Heller decision in D.C., the Second Amendment through court precedent was well understood to be for a national defense. I don't think Americans have, an implicit right to own a gun. I think the Supreme Court was probably wrong with the Heller decision.
This is just the internet definition, but it says that it is a force that engages in rebel or terrorist activities in opposition to a regular army. That's kind of ridiculous. Yeah, I just wanted to know exactly how they define a militia. It says to supplement a regular army in an emergency. But if you're supplementing an army, I'm pretty sure that means you can go against the government.
Again, I think that was supplementing state defense at that point. I don't think the founders necessarily wanted their new operation to be able to rebel against them.
Well, I care more about the New Hampshire Constitution that has the right of revolution written into it than the United States Constitution anyway.
Yeah, when they set out the rules, they said people get to carry guns, and the federal government, doesn't get to have an army. And so I don't know. That's what that sounds like to me.
Personally, I think the precedent pre-Heller, pre-McDonald v. Chicago was very clear on that. But in general, I'm not necessarily in the camp that thinks general citizens should be carrying guns absent training. It's kind of one of the conversations that bothers me, is people will ask, are you pro or anti-gun control? And that is one of the most loaded questions I have ever heard, because on some matters, I'm for loosening gun laws. I think the NFA is ridiculous. I think restrictions on suppressors, short-barreled weapons, automatic firearms, etc., that doesn't make any sense. If I can have a standard, 6-shot revolver, I don't know why I can't have a fully automatic weapon or a suppressed weapon or anything like that. But the idea of just handing out weapons like candy, just being able to go to a store, as you can in many states now, and just buy a gun. I mean, yeah, there's the 4473 background checks, but those are inherently useless, because if they can't process the check within 3 days, they say, here you go. Pretty please promise you're not going to kill anybody. That's just absurd.
I don't really see why you dismiss the idea that, well, it doesn't matter because criminals can get their hands on a gun anyway. I don't understand how you can dismiss that, because putting more things up that you think are going to keep bad guys away from having guns is just going to keep good guys away from having guns, and it won't keep bad guys away from having guns because they'll just break the law.
Right. Most people aren't surprised when they don't pass a background check. They know there's something there, and they don't even try it that route. They just get one of their friends to go get it for them.
Or they steal it from somebody else.
This is remarkable to me, because the idea that more good guys with guns will stop bad guys with guns has proven to be patently untrue.
I wouldn't even make that argument, but I wouldn't even make that argument, but I would make the argument
proves it. New Hampshire literally proves it.
In their own rules shall not be infringed, and they've infringed all over the place.
No, New Hampshire is not an example of disproving it, because there are several states, like I think Alabama is a good example. Mississippi is a good example. Arkansas is a good example. New England is a very unique, very well-educated, very wealthy sort of community. You're not going to produce many criminals anyway. But if you look at places like Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, very high gun ownership rates, very, very loose laws, even looser than what you have in New England. No, they have very, very high firearms homicides rates. In fact, they lead the country.
Where? Sorry,
if
where?
I'm not mistaken. Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas.
Yeah, I would say crime has more to do with desperation than it does anything else.
In general, yes. But on the other hand, I don't think it should be easy to just hand out killing machines like we do now. That's remarkably absurd.
Well, I don't know what you mean by hand them out. I don't know anybody who gives these away for free.
In the overwhelming majority of states, you don't even need to take a background check if it's from a private seller.
Where are they giving out free guns?
You know what I meant. Basically, handing them out doesn't mean free. I can go to a flea market down here in Georgia and buy a gun tomorrow.
Yeah, that cat's out of the bag. Somebody already made guns. You're not going to put it back in. I don't know what to tell you, man. Thanks for the call, Stefan. I don't know.
I don't agree with Stefan on one thing. Like, he's all for the idea of we need some gun control because good guys with guns will make mistakes. Well, police make mistakes too. I don't think a shiny badge or a uniform is going to make them any better at not making those mistakes.
That's right.
Taking the law into their hands, so to speak.
Yeah. What do you think about gun control? Listener, give us a call. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. Is it reasonable for governments to want, fixed magazines and such? Is this infringement of the right to bear arms? Give us a call. Let us know. This is Free Talk Live.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. Forkfest.party.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. The US Secretary of State says Washington will walk away from efforts to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine unless there are clear signs of progress in the coming days. Marco Rubio was speaking after attending talks with Ukraine, France, Germany and the UK in the French capital. Ross Cullen reports.
The United States Secretary of State issued a stark warning to European allies and Ukraine that unless there is real progress towards a peace deal between Kyiv and Moscow in the coming days, then, quote, I think we're just going to move on. Marco Rubio said, we're not going to continue with this endeavour for weeks and months on end. He was speaking after the first in-person talks between the US, Ukraine, the UK, France and Germany ahead of further meetings scheduled in London next week. Ross Cullen, Paris.
US President Donald Trump has expressed 100% confidence that the United States will reach a trade deal with the European Union. His comments came as he hosted Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni at the White House, the first European leader to visit Washington since Trump brought in 20% tariffs on the EU, then paused them earlier this month. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
The Italian Prime Minister also voiced optimism about securing a trade deal with the US, and she invited President Trump to meetings in Italy to advance those talks. Giorgia Meloni shares a warmer relationship with the president than other EU leaders. She was the only EU leader to attend Donald Trump's inauguration earlier this year, and he heaped praise on her ahead of their meeting, saying she had taken Europe by storm. She said her goal is to make the West great again. Ms. Meloni has a tightrope to walk between representing the interests of the EU and remaining in the US president's good books. Kate Fisher, Washington.
At least 3 people have died and dozens injured after a severe hailstorm and torrential rain battered Islamabad. With Pakistan ranked as the 5th most climate vulnerable country globally, experts are sounding an alarm over worsening weather patterns and demanding the government urgently scale up climate adaptation measures. Hira Mustafa reports.
Eyewitnesses have described hailstones the size of golf balls pelting Pakistan's capital city of Islamabad. Some northern provinces have also reported flooding. The violent storm swept through the capital and northwestern parts of Pakistan on Wednesday, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Officials say there has been significant damage to solar panels, vehicles, and residential properties. In 2022, widespread flooding linked to climate change left 1/3 of the country submerged. This year, the country is seeing record heat waves with temperature at least 7 degrees above normal. Hira Mustafa, Islamabad.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Talk radio you control. Give us a call. The phone number is 603-283-6160. Are you tired of the oppressive rules and moderation of big tech social media sites? Our Mastodon server at social.freetalklive.com can set you free. Mastodon is free, open source, decentralized, and federated. Multiple apps are available for iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, and Linux. Social.freetalklive.com. In the studio tonight, it's Stu,
Riley,
and Bonnie.
And we are going to go to the phones. We've got an unscreened caller. You're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Yes. Am I on the line?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, just calling about the last caller about the debate about gun control.
Mm-hmm.
I just think you guys missed a little something that is important, which would be that in a voluntarist world, it would all be about private property. So each community would be able to decide on their own what rules they want regarding guns. So if you wanted to live with a bunch of people and you didn't want any guns whatsoever, then you'd be able to make that community, and there wouldn't be any guns in your community.
That's right. And that's basically the way things ran in what is now known as the Wild West, when back in like the 1800s and early 1900s in the western small towns, some of them decided they had, such as Tombstone, Arizona, they decided to have a no gun rule within inside of the town. And
everyone died, so they called it Tombstone,
Arizona.
Arizona.
That's where a famous shootout went down.
Really?
So, wow. Yeah, the OK Corral shootout. That happened in Tombstone, where they had a no guns rule.
Interesting.
Yep. But I totally agree. It should be, whatever the community wants. I guess, and the community totally wanted this no gun rule because they were being harassed by there were some ruffians hanging around, such as happens in a mining town, and some of the more respectable residents didn't like people just walking around with guns all willy-nilly, and they wanted this no gun rule. And how much of that is directly led up to the shootout is, it's hard to substantiate because the history there is it was written by the victor, so to speak. And so it does turn out, though, that it was, that shootout directly started because these guys were disobeying the no-gun rule in town.
And I think voluntarism answers a lot of these really tough questions. Like you could even, for abortion or whatever horrible, terrible issue that you think of that is so divisive, there's going to be an answer to it on a community level where you can say, okay, I want to live in a community that allows this. And if you don't want to live here, you don't have to. And I think that's the peaceful way to go about organizing societies. And I think that's really the only way to do it that would be peaceful and spiritual, you could even say, in a way that that doesn't use force.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think there could definitely be some success that way. There's
it's like we all think we have to live in this world where we all have to make decisions for each other, but that's not the case. We don't have to do this. It's a false dichotomy.
Well, we do live in a world where we have to live with the ramification of the decisions made by our neighbors. And that's where we run up against people advocating for a state of some kind. Or is it, in other words, the overriding of consent. So,
right. That's why volunteers, they think that all decisions should be voluntary, including the one you have with your government.
Right.
And that's really the most important, the relationship you have. All relationships should be based on voluntary consent.
I agree.
I also think that, like, in these scenarios where people talk about a future that's completely voluntary and you can just choose which place to live in, the main important thing is that if all of them you aren't able to leave all of them, then it won't be voluntary. Like if somebody says, I want to make a society where we close off the borders and you're not allowed to leave and no one's allowed to come here, then how's that gonna work? Because you can't really say that you have the choice to live this way if those people say, well, we all voted, then you're not allowed to leave. I don't know. I just think about that because.
Well, you would be allowed to leave if you didn't if say maybe you agreed to it at the first place. It's like, oh, this is not really working out too well. Maybe I guess you could say that they could sign a contract that says you're not allowed to leave, but who would sign a contract that says I'm not going to be allowed?
Well, lots of people probably would because they think at the time they're never going to change their mind. Lots of people think I'll never change my mind about X, Y, or Z, and then a few years down the road, I actually do change my mind about that. But see, that's why I just think about that. As a military brat, I think about how am I going to be able to leave?
Yep, and the example I like to use as devil's advocate on how would a voluntary town, for example, operate, having looked into the old Mormon history and discovering why they were chased out of the places they were chased out of, it's because they were it's partially from immoral behavior, but it's mostly from bad financial dealings where they were absolutely causing financial havoc on the areas that they were moving into, and that's real. Not paying loans and just kind of squatting on places where they weren't welcome, and
plus they were using their Zionistic ideologies to claim areas, and that didn't sit right with the locals.
Right, and so a lot of that is what got the mobs after them. And so, what do you do with a smaller subset of your society that has decided they're going to act in a way that's intolerable to the rest of the society? What happens then, and how do you deal with that on a voluntary basis?
Well, if it's private property, you could exclude them if you wanted to.
Kind of, though, except that they had purchased it on loan, which they never paid.
Well, or what if your neighbor owns a house and they decide to rent out to people that are bad? I don't know. I think about these types of things. Like, I think it always comes back to, in my mind, as long as every single inch of land isn't claimed by some corporation, then we should be fine, because at any point you should be able to leave, go find yourself a place and make it your own homesteading, by homesteading it. And I think that's the only way that something like this will work out. Because if all of the land is taken up by some group that claims it, and they say, we claimed it and we decided these rules, and you don't want to live by any of those rules, then you're not free,
Yep.
Because there are people in New Hampshire that talk amongst themselves, and I watch and I observe and I lurk, and there are tons of people that are like, when New Hampshire is independent, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll close the borders, we'll do that and this. And sometimes it leads to places I really think is kind of dark. Like you can, just like any utilitarian, not that I'm saying like libertarians should be that, but like you can go down a rabbit hole that makes you start justifying really bad things when you're saying a society. Well, I would normally be against this, but we live in a society and it affects me and you know what I'm saying? Like, we shouldn't have people
justify anything based on the good of society, right? And that's the utilitarian argument.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it breaks down. It's like, whose idea of good? What is good? And then it basically boils down to this person's idea of good, and we might not all agree on what this person thinks is good. But I think the bigger problem is, like, we have these problems that we're not exactly sure how we would solve in a free way. But I think the important thing is, like, we need to try to solve them in a free way instead of in a forceful way, instead of using violence, instead of putting people in cages. Like, let's try to figure it out in a voluntary way. And who knows, maybe we'll have some really creative organic solutions that come up to solve these really difficult problems. But we don't know because we're not able to figure it out.
I absolutely agree.
In nature.
I agree, and I love that. Are you considering moving to New Hampshire?
Definitely. I have been for a while.
You should come up to PorcFest.
Well, having some difficulties, to tell you the truth. So I would love to go there, but legally I'm not allowed to leave the county. So
that's
been an issue for me.
That suck, man.
Yep.
Yeah,
get
it's
that
been an
clear.
issue. I want to go there. I want to. There's a lot of things. Yeah, definitely. That was one of my ideas a few years ago, and it just kind of like broke down. I wasn't able to do anything with it because of the legal situation. So
yeah,
is that a temporary thing?
Off your back.
It hopefully is temporary. Hopefully we'll be clearing up very soon, and I will plan to make the move. Hopefully. So
awesome.
But that's the plan. But I just I wanted to say too. It's like, so yeah, we don't know what the solutions are going to be to these problems. But yeah, let's try to figure it out in a voluntary way. But I don't know. It's just people want to think that the government we have to use force. We have to use violence. We have to put people in cages. And it's just like there's got to be a peaceful solution to this.
I agree.
And that's why I think libertarianism and voluntarism is the only political philosophy that's compatible with true spiritual values of love and peace and nonviolence.
Yep, I agree with that as well. That's my main driver for for wanting to end this human slavery known as government, is that it's spiritually
I think
hard to deal with.
I think that's the motivation of everybody in this room, I would think.
Yeah. Thanks for the call. And to stop playing devil's advocate on the how do you deal with the Mormons in your community, I think that was a problem of them preemptively setting up these rules that they called government and assuming that would take care of them. That's what gave these higher ups that made the decisions to move to these places and behave badly. They knew they could get away with it to some extent because the mob was held at bay by the local governments, and they knew how to manipulate the local governments. So without those, maybe they would never have even tried it in the first place.
Oh, man, I really forgot to say this to Stefan when he was on the phone. Is that his name? But he was like, well, and it's kind of related to what you're saying. He was like, well, I think it's worse to think of somebody who's basically like a vigilante doing something bad. And in the case you're talking about, he would be like, well, it'd be worse if the mob just took it into their own hands. But honestly, is there any proof that happens more often than people just do crimes? Like, I doubt it. Like, vigilantism is higher than the average rate of crimes. I really doubt it.
Yeah, and I'm less scared of that than I am the alternatives. So I'm willing to try.
I mean, like, definitely not. It's definitely not the case that vigilantism kills more people than the government does. So. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like, I am less scared of the mob rule than what we currently have.
Right.
Especially, I mean, you just read the news any given day, and you can see how scary things are. And it's all directly because of this entity, this way of thinking that people have, right? Once they had a revolution here to get rid of the tyrannical king across the ocean that was doing things they didn't like, what do they immediately set up kind of the same thing, and they just changed it a little bit, but it was the same thing. We got to try something different, I think. We're gonna go back to the phones. We've got Dodger in Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live.
Well, I am really sorry to bring up a previous caller.
It's fine.
Specifically, Skeeter, but there was a subject brought up that I would like to talk about. So, Bonnie, during that call, you made the assertion that a child, in your view, is the property of the parent until come a certain time, correct?
I think a certain time is not a good way to say it because people will be like, well, which time? As if I'm supposed to be able to answer that for everyone. And I'd say until it becomes apparent to the child and the parent that situation is over. That's exactly what happened with my parents and probably everyone I'm talking to right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm one of those instances where I actually got legally emancipated before I turned 18.
Yeah.
And I think I've called the show and talked about it before.
Yep, I remember.
And you mentioned until there's that conversation had probably happened with my mom and stepdad long before we actually had the conversation because they realized that I was independent. Even though I was still under their roof, they didn't have to pay for my food because I had a job, so I would typically just, I'd buy my own food type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I bring that up because I had that conversation with my mom and my stepdad, and my mom actually said, and keep in mind, we still have a very good relationship to this day, me and my mom. But she actually said to me, I was expecting this. I had just turned 17, and I was already independent, came and go as I pleased, essentially, within reason. I didn't. So I say that to say this, that maybe there are people out there, sorry, that don't understand that there's a point that we all grow up. It's a different rate for every person. Everybody grows up a little differently, and a lot of it is based on their circumstances. A lot of it is based on their intellect. There are a lot of factors that go in. So to put an arbitrary age as to, all right, on this day you're not allowed to vote, but the very next day you are.
Yeah.
Just as an example, or this day you're not allowed to purchase alcohol, but
Yeah.
I
or
remember
get a bank account,
actually,
or fly on a plane, or rent a car. Yeah.
I remember I actually was living in an apartment on my with a roommate, because at that time I was still in high school, holding down 2 jobs. Believe it or not, it was kind of, but I remember that when I was 18, I walked in and purchased my first pack of cigarettes at 12:01 a.m. Type of thing. Why is that? I was able to get cigarettes long before that, and I don't recommend anybody smokes, but I was able to procure cigarettes with friends. Again, it was no surprise to my mom when I came to her, shortly after my 17th birthday, and said, hey, and we actually did it legally. We went through the courts, and, I became
what was the point of
legally
doing,
emancipated.
What was the point of doing that? Just so that you could function as an adult?
It allowed me to get around the number of hours that I was allowed to work.
That makes a lot of sense. So without those stupid laws that keep younger people from working, there would be more young Americans just doing low-paying jobs, and then there wouldn't be this whole crisis where everybody's like, there's a worker crisis, nobody wants to do, like fast food jobs and stuff like that. And there would be more independent, younger people who, if they wanted to leave, could leave a lot earlier. In fact, the life experience of having a job changes someone so much. There might be people capable of growing up at an earlier rate than they would otherwise without a job.
Well, I mean, it gave me invaluable experience. Like I can't even begin to explain, and it just I don't think that this exists anymore, but there used to be work programs where if you had a job, you could actually get credits and graduate high school early.
Wow.
That was a thing when I went to high school.
Yeah, I remember programs like that. I had a friend that was really smart. He graduated at like 15 and he was taking college classes after that.
And I'll tell you what, I grew up in pretty disadvantaged, a single. My mom was a single mom of 5 boys. I'm the second to the youngest, but still, I mean, I didn't grow up in the best atmosphere, but I always had more money than all of my friends that had rich parents, because even though I didn't collect an allowance, I went out and I earned it. I got a paper route at the age of 10.
Wow.
And I've been working since. I'm 42 now.
Awesome.
So, I mean, there have been highs and lows, but, I mean, at either rate, I don't understand why, somebody, he was talking, Skeeter, sorry to bring him back up, but he's talking separating from parents at 21 or something. I just don't understand that. I can't wrap my brain around that, because me and all of my brothers, I think my little brother, I think that he was the oldest one to move out of our mom's house, and I think he was 19.
Saying that the government should be allowed to tell people when they would be allowed to move out of their house or when their parents would be allowed to stop being forced to provide for them is like saying that your parents don't own you, but the government does. Stupid.
Yep. Thanks for the call tonight, Dodger. That's you bring up some great points, and I agree that people individually get to that point in their life where they're ready to take on the full scope of responsibility that it requires to keep yourself alive and happy.
And a lot of people that are statists will point to, but on average, well, your brain development, first of all, that just sounds like pseudoscience, like midwit science, in my opinion, that everybody's brain just magically is done at developing at 25. The same age. People say 25 for men and then 22 for women.
There are developmental milestones that seem to that seem to run in common. Like
regardless of that,
boys will change at 18 and at 25, and again somewhere in their early to mid 30s, just in their thought processes.
But what I'm trying to say is that not only do I not believe that necessarily happens like in clockwork for everyone, but the other thing is that some of these things people point to is really just a talking point that doesn't actually equate to whether or not you're capable of living your life. Like one thing that people always point to, your brain isn't done developing until, let's say, 22 for a woman. Well, and then they try to point to, 17-year-olds shouldn't date a 19-year-old because it's pedophilia, because blah, blah, blah. Well, your brain, it's all actually just about size. That number that they're citing is just about size. It has nothing to do with neurons connecting, and it's just about the size of, I think it's the neocortex, and it gets to 90% of the size by the time you're 5 years old. It only has 5% of the rest of the way to grow, and that continues happening, but much slower until you're, let's say, it's exactly when you're 22 as a woman. How relevant could that possibly be to my life, to where the idea that I dated a 31-year-old when I was 19 was, that was just completely inappropriate and horrible for me because I couldn't possibly have made that decision myself. That's ridiculous. I think that just sounds like something somebody found out. It's technically true. Yeah, it's technically true. It says right here, your brain doesn't get to 100% of the size in that specific part until you're 22. So now let's use it as a talking point. See what I'm saying? It's not that I'm saying it's not true at all.
Yeah, it sounds like the kind of information that's only useful to people who think it takes a village to raise a child instead of, right? So, or where they need the whole society to be in the business of everybody's parenting and or
Hillary Clinton
like child
stuff.
development, right?
Regardless of where development happens in the brain and when it stops developing or whatever, people are shaped by their environments, and if their environment is teaching them how to find work and develop those brain skills and developing those brain habits early, they're going to find work. They're going to be able to emancipate themselves from their parents early. And so to put arbitrary numbers on things to say that, they're not done developing their brain at 25 or whatever, or 22, is just ridiculous. Let's come with a better way to do it.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of men don't emotionally settle themselves to, to a level of reasonable until they're well past their 30s. So we're going to say that everybody needs to be under the control of their parents until they're 45 now?
The older I get, the more I realize people in their 30s are not that mature.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me.
Give us a call and let us know what you think. Do people reach an age of self-dependence on an individual basis, or is it just at 18 for everybody? The phone number here is 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Protection. Eleutheromania. The insatiable desire for freedom. Filibuster. Police state. It's the new 3-song heavy metal EP from Captain Kickass. Available now on your favorite music app or get it directly from CaptainKickass.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. The US Secretary of State says Washington will walk away from efforts to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine unless there are clear signs of progress in the coming days. Marco Rubio was speaking after attending talks with Ukraine, France, Germany and the UK in the French capital. Ross Cullen reports.
The United States Secretary of State issued a stark warning to European allies and Ukraine that unless there is real progress towards a peace deal between Kyiv and Moscow in the coming days, then, quote, I think we're just going to move on. Marco Rubio said, we're not going to continue with this endeavour for weeks and months on end. He was speaking after the first in-person talks between the US, Ukraine, the UK, France and Germany ahead of further meetings scheduled in London next week. Ross Cullen, Paris.
US President Donald Trump has expressed 100% confidence that the United States will reach a trade deal with the European Union. His comments came as he hosted Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni at the White House, the first European leader to visit Washington since Trump brought in 20% tariffs on the EU, then paused them earlier this month. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
The Italian Prime Minister also voiced optimism about securing a trade deal with the US, and she invited President Trump to meetings in Italy to advance those talks. Giorgia Meloni shares a warmer relationship with the president than other EU leaders. She was the only EU leader to attend Donald Trump's inauguration earlier this year, and he heaped praise on her ahead of their meeting, saying she had taken Europe by storm. She said her goal is to make the West great again. Ms. Meloni has a tightrope to walk between representing the interests of the EU and remaining in the US president's good books. Kate Fisher, Washington.
And the Trump administration says it will appeal a federal judge's order to provide sworn testimony over its efforts it made to return a man mistakenly deported to El Salvador. The Supreme Court has called on it to facilitate Kilma Abrego Garcia's return to the US, upholding a court order by the judge. The White House claims he had ties to the criminal gang MS-13, though his lawyers say there's no evidence of that. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is defending his deportation.
He was illegally inside our country and had a lawful deportation order made him subject to removal back to his home country of El Salvador. And if he ever ends up back in the United States, he would immediately be deported again.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. At least 3 people have died and dozens injured after a severe hailstorm and torrential rain battered Islamabad. With Pakistan ranked as the 5th most climate-vulnerable country globally, experts are sounding an alarm over worsening weather patterns and demanding the government urgently scale up climate adaptation measures. Hira Mustafa reports.
Eyewitnesses have described hailstones the size of golf balls pelting Pakistan's capital city of Islamabad. Some northern provinces have also reported flooding. The violent storm swept through the capital and northwestern parts of Pakistan on Wednesday, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Officials say there has been significant damage to solar panels, vehicles, and residential properties. In 2022, widespread flooding linked to climate change left 1/3 of the country submerged. This year, the country is seeing record heat waves with temperature at least 7 degrees above normal. Environmentalists blame climate change and shifting monsoon patterns, urging authorities to adopt climate-resilient policies. Hira Mustafa, Islamabad.
A federal judge has ruled that Google broke antitrust laws by maintaining an illegal monopoly in the digital advertising space. The decision could force major changes to one of the tech giant's biggest revenue streams. Ira Spitzer reports.
A U.S. district judge has found Google guilty of using its dominance in online advertising to block rivals and limit choice for advertisers and publishers. The Justice Department says Google acquired competitors and tied key products together, leaving much of the industry dependent on its tools. The judge said Google's conduct violated the Sherman Antitrust Act and caused substantial harm to both competition and consumers. While the company plans to appeal, the Justice Department may now push to break up Google's ad business entirely. This is the second time in under a year that a federal court has called Google an illegal monopolist. Ira Spitzer, San Francisco.
I'm Caroline Malone in Washington, and that was The Week in Review.
Hailing it as the industry's most innovative product to date, global cosmetics brand Maybelline released its long-awaited Ideal Woman Rubber Mask this week, a thick latex facial covering worn over the head in lieu of makeup.
By simply yanking it over your face, you can instantly achieve a fresh look that conforms to Western ideals of beauty. Essentially, you can just roll out of bed, stretch the latex urethane rubber beauty mask over your natural face, and boom, you're ready to start your day. Forget concealer, powder, blush, or mascara. Now you can achieve a look that adheres to the conventional standard of feminine perfection in seconds.
It's incredible. You immediately see the difference. The very first time I tried it on, my pores were minimized, my skin tone was more even, and all of the idiosyncratic little wrinkles, physical imperfections, and tiny irregularities that make my face unique were erased.
I don't spend a lot of time on makeup anyway, but now all I need to do is yank this thing over my head, and that's it. I'm conventionally attractive. I mean, this gives me so much more time to find an outfit that makes my body look thin and socially acceptable.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna help.
This is Free Talk Live. Talk radio you control. Give us a call. The phone number is 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's Stu,
Riley,
and Bonnie.
And on this eve of 420, Riley has some things he'd like to share with us.
That's right. So tomorrow, of course, is 420, and of course, it's Easter as well. It's fun to celebrate Easter and 420 all on the same day. But tomorrow at the New Hampshire State House, I'll be gathering with people to enjoy some cannabis, perhaps, or perhaps not, and we'll talk about cannabis decriminalization. So I'm looking forward to that. But I wrote a speech for the occasion, and I figured I'd bring it into the show tonight and do my best to read it. I'm not a fast rail reader, so I will do my best to read it as best as I can. It says, "Today we gather to celebrate the plant that has been with humanity for thousands of years as food, medicine, and as a sacrament. Yet access to this plant hasn't been easy for humanity. Words like weed, demon, degeneracy, and laziness have been used to demonize cannabis and those who enjoy her delights. She's our ally on her spiritual journey, a medicine for the suffering soul, and she clothes the naked and feeds the hungry. When cannabis came to humankind as the hemp plant, she came as food. We ate her seeds and discovered she could be used as building material and a way to survive. Over time, she transformed into medicine to heal us from our suffering. Today, many states have passed medical cannabis laws in order to allow people to access the medicinal properties of this plant. While that's a necessary step to cannabis reform, it's not far enough. We have the right to grow cannabis, and no stranger or group of strangers has a right to say we can't have a plant given to us by God, universe, or Great Spirit. Cannabis has evolved beside us to be our spiritual ally in connecting us to presence, our breath, and life. Yet strangers assume the right to lock people in cages, steal their money, and destroy their lives, all for the price of civilization. We are not free to access this plant until badge-wearing thugs are no longer allowed to harass us for growing, medicating, or otherwise enjoying cannabis as we see fit. Cannabis has been my ally in bringing me to the Shire, a place of freedom. So, we gather to celebrate and pay homage to those who have fought for cannabis freedoms, and continue to do so. Instead of harsh words like weed, demon, and degeneracy as descriptions of cannabis, I use words like friend, medicine, and teacher to commemorate this wonderful plant. Let's smoke a bowl for liberty and remember our lost liberties, that they may be restored to us.
Yay!
That's well said.
Oh, that was really, really nice.
Yep, I think that's a well-written speech, and it points out some of the some very impactful things that have been a part of my life. I've taken a few bruises from the war on cannabis, so to speak. But
yeah, I think all of us have to some extent.
But I watched somebody have handed down a sentence of, let's see. I'm trying to remember what the sentence was. It was draconian. It was like 60 years plus life or something ridiculous for a guy selling weed just because he had a gun with him at the time. Yeah, in Utah. And I knew the guy personally.
Absurd.
And
that's absurd.
And had I heard this story when I was 12 or something, I'd just think, oh, that guy's bad and he probably deserves to be in a cage. But later in life, after having tried cannabis and knowing that it was not the danger that they tried to tell me it was, and personally knowing this guy, and he definitely was not deserving of that kind of treatment, it opened my eyes. It was one of the very first things that opened my eyes to what tyranny we live under. What harsh draconian sort of rules we've accepted.
I think for me, coming from a state and purity culture where things like cannabis and things like drugs were demonized to the point that you weren't allowed to touch them unless you were given authorization by a doctor, a man or a woman with a lab coat and a degree. Like, coming to a place where these things are absolutely sold by friends to friends is a breath of fresh air to me. It's like having access to a plant that was given to us by God to use for our benefit. And so for a group of strangers to claim this monopoly on telling me what I can and can't use is absurd.
Yeah. And its use goes way beyond that of medical, as you pointed out in your speech, as a building material and now as a plant source of oils that could be used for plastics that are going to be way less toxic than what we currently have.
Right.
I consider it one of the reasons that I was able to wake up to so many different things, and it was still really slow, but like I needed the extra boost because I remember when my friends first started smoking weed and I was maybe like 13. I didn't ever smoke until I was 14, but didn't get high until I was 15 because a lot of people have this experience for the first time they smoke. They didn't get high, but anyways. I remember being still like a year away from that and my friends started smoking weed and I was just like, I don't understand why you guys would do that. That's just horrible. It's bad. And one of them asking me like, well, why do you think it's bad? And I just like couldn't even like really say. I just was absolutely like speechless, as in I didn't have any reason why to say it's bad. And I was just like, well, isn't it like scary? That sounds scary and awful to be just like like crazy out of your mind. They're like, well, you just don't even know what it's like. And then when I finally did it, realizing it was nothing like what I had been, kind of like this picture I had painted that would be like being possessed by demons or something. Like, why would people even do that?
Yeah.
But anyways, that was like something that kind of opened my mind up. And then Ian said the same thing, that whenever he first smoked weed, he was just like, that's what made him a oppositional defiance disorder case. Because he realized that all the things that he had been told about it were not true.
Yeah, they were lying. Yep, I was in my youth, I was convinced that it would destroy your health rapidly and that it would turn you into a bad person on the spot. Certainly.
Wow.
Certainly, if you didn't repent from it, then you were going to hell.
I never even was really told like very specific things. Like, honestly, health wasn't even a thought to me. It was more just like, oh, it's so bad. It's like you'll be just like tortured and see scary things the whole time you're high. It's so bad. It's just like inviting demons into you. It was almost like this like nebulous thing that I was just like, I just know it's bad. Well, why? I don't know.
That's funny. They didn't push that angle on me too hard. It may have made me more curious.
Yeah, certainly cannabis can make you face all that anxiety in your head, but the reality is when you learn how to navigate it, when you learn how to just breathe and just sit with that anxiety and be curious about it, it's going to go away. You're going to find out, maybe I have some things to work on in my life to help me navigate the anxiety or mitigate the anxiety in my life. Maybe I need to get my life together. Maybe I need to get a job. Maybe I need to get off the couch and do something with my life instead of just sit here like a bump on a log.
I would say that even more proof to what you just said is the fact that once I started smoking in high school and I had like nothing to worry about almost, I had no anxiety while high. It was like instantly like, wait, so this is it? This is awesome.
Yeah.
It was like great. And then I start getting anxiety when I'm like 22, 21 and like honestly really needed change. And it's like, wow, why is weed making me uncomfortable? I just want to sit here and waste my life away and smoke a little weed. I can't even do that.
She does not give me any comfort when I'm wasting my life away, that's for sure.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's what it is. It seems that when people who don't regularly partake in cannabis are under the influence of it, they have a self-realization moment. A lot of times they're able to see some aspects of themselves they don't normally look at. And that might be the anxiety causing factor, or especially if it's used as a form of escapism.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's its greatest use. It can be used that way, but I think anything you seek escapism from is ultimately going to cause you harm.
I agree with that.
I think that I definitely have more than one even like little period in my life where I hadn't even been smoking weed and I decided to start again because of like whether I admitted to myself at the time or not, escapism. And maybe the first couple times was like, yeah, this is what I needed. I'm happy. This is what I wanted. And then it just rapidly was like, nope, it's not hitting. It's not fun. It's like giving me anxiety and all this stuff. And I really think that the marijuana is, like Riley said, actually a being. And it's not just like, I think of the world as not just like a machine. I believe in spirit and stuff like that. So what I'm trying to say is I really think that what it's communicating to me in those times was just like, this isn't what you need. And you're not using me correctly. It's almost like disrespect. And like, you're going to kind of suffer until you figure this out. And just like giving you a little bit of like discomfort. So, like you have things that need to change. And honestly, one thing that always gives me anxiety on whenever I am anxious smoking marijuana is certain aspects of my life that feel almost like embarrassing. It's so weird. Like it's like, it'll be something that I don't walk around embarrassed about. And then for some reason I'll think about it and be like, that's just like embarrassing. And to me, it's like, I need to change that, and I've been putting it off. It's almost every single time. It's literally exactly that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have similar experiences with cannabis, and I think on that point, a lot of things do have sort of a spirit to them. they may even have an actual spirit and be, alive. They like a plant spirit, especially in the case of if you look at things like the way that ayahuasca is made by the shamans in South America, or if you look at psilocybin mushrooms and what they do without processing them in any way, they just grow out of the ground, and if you eat that thing, you're going to communicate with
You're
going to communicate with a spirit that seems to have a repeatable effect, and a lot of people have very similar experiences. It seems to be the case with a lot of mind-altering substances. Even I've heard that there's a creepy similarity between many people's DMT blast-off trips, and where they see a lot of the same things, and those types of stories lead me to believe there's definitely a spirit behind.
Well, I will say I've definitely heard that like multiple different people that did DMT at completely different times, different ages, different years will say, oh, and I saw this, and they'll be like, I saw that too. But what blows my mind even more, in my opinion, is that me and the two other people sitting next to me were all looking at the same thing that quote unquote wasn't there. And talking about it with each other. Like, you see that smoke sitting a few inches off of the table and on the floor? Yeah, it's like green, and it keeps arranging itself into like symbols. But I've never all the way blasted off, and I kind of don't want to, but whatever.
Yeah, I think I might give it a ride if if it were presented to me. And
that level was fun, and then I was like, oh, I want more of this. I don't want the smoke to go away. This is fun. And I did another hit, and the whole room turned to liquid, and I don't think I can go further than that. Seriously.
Interesting.
That was like the 2-minute experience of like the longest 2 minutes of my life.
Wow, fascinating.
So I do want to say something about ayahuasca since it was brought up. I mean, it's made from two different plants, at least two different plants. You've got the ayahuasca vine, which normally is not psychoactive. Then you have the leaves from either a chacruna plant or something else that creates the orally active DMT. And that's the only form I've experienced DMT on. So I don't have a lot of experience smoking DMT. I don't know if I ever would. But, DMT, psilocybin, these chemicals are really helpful in our spirituality and helping our minds function better.
Yep, that's how it would seem to me. Right now, we're going to go to the phones. We've got Jet. Jet, you're on Free Talk Live.
Well, I thought I'd check in, just having to hear you talking about the cannabis thing. Now, as you know, I'm a dedicated disciple of Christ. I'm not sure why he didn't talk about cannabis at all. He talked a little bit about wine and all that, but I thought, Riley, here's what you have to incorporate into is Genesis 11 and Genesis 1, 11 and 12. I'll just do 12. It says, the land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good.
Nice.
Anyway,
I agree with that, yeah.
What's also interesting is how, as you said, strangers can come along and somehow make God's creation illegal. I mean, I don't know why more people don't get that part of it.
Yeah.
But cannabis does allow you to accomplish a few things, depending upon the strain. I'll give you an example of my experience. Do this stuff very often, but I found myself, I lost my keys in the car. So I grabbed the flashlight and I'm looking all around, and after 5 minutes of looking for my keys, I realized that I was holding a flashlight which was for my keys.
It was a keychain, the flashlight was connected?
Yes, I was using the flashlight on my keychain to look for my keys.
That's funny.
Yeah, and that happened to be a couple times. With the keys, wondering where my keys were, and they were in my hand, type of thing. Everybody's done something like had their sunglasses on the top of their head or something like that, looking for them. But cannabis does allow you to also enjoy the silliness of some things. I can remember in some cases just somebody would say something that would normally not be that funny, but you just end up just laughing your head off about it. But it's probably not good to get all toked up and go for a drive, things like that. But at the same time, I'm thinking if the good Lord created it and He made it, and He said it was good, then I have to believe that.
I have to believe it too.
No, I found an article here talking about whether or not Jesus used cannabis personally, and somebody, let's see here. This was Chris Bennett.
I've heard about him.
He just writes for writes in the drugs magazine High Times. He wrote an article, Was Jesus a Stoner? And he made claims that Jesus used cannabis oil in his anointing oils. Or some kind of cannabis extract. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that part.
I don't know about that either.
I initially kind of tend to think that, the plant was intended to be used medicinally, and I think the only situation where people started smoking it was, they cleared out this weeds and set them on fire, and they're going, wait a minute, what's happening here?
Yeah, everybody starts laughing.
I think that's where the smoking came from, but prior to that, it was the seed thing and the oils and all that good stuff.
I know.
At least that's.
I know traditionally in India that cannabis was either eaten or drank in a bong lassi type thing. So it's interesting to me that cannabis was originally eaten or drank, because here we're smoking it in our Western societies, and yet it's more useful to our body if we're actually ingesting it through our digestive system. It's more powerful that way.
Well, there's, I don't know how far back this goes, but there's the Hashishans.
Yeah.
Which is where the word assassin got its name. Were smoking hash quite some time ago.
Well, my biggest issue is the fact that some goofball called beastards can come along and decree that something which occurs in nature is now somehow illegal.
What is a beastard?
Beastard.
Oh,
yeah, that's a bastard, but as a beast.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, you could say bastard on the air, right? But then I realized you're making a portmanteau.
I refer to them as beastard, so you can break the word apart as well.
Nice. The briefcase bandits. That was one of the ones ChatGPT came up with. Can't remember.
Clowns.
Thank you. I was gonna say I can't come up with any other ones.
I don't know. It's just still. I saw a YouTube just yesterday about, some family got stopped in New Mexico, and the cop said, "Well, I'm a state police, and so I'm part of the Homeland Security, and even though it might be legal here in this state, it's still illegal under the federal scheme.
Whoa.
So I have to search your vehicle and do all this other stuff, take you to jail and all that."
Wow, I had not heard about that kind of crap happening. Like in a stop like that? Like maybe like the government going into a business and they're like, well, because the federal government doesn't matter about New Mexico's laws, but not like a car stop. I didn't know that happened.
I don't know. I know they do it at Border Patrol checkpoints because those are federal agents.
Mm-hmm.
All they have to say is, sniff, sniff, I smell cannabis.
Yeah. That used to be enough to get you pulled out of the car violently and dog sicked on you and you'd end up in a cage. Thankfully, we've gotten a little past that. Thanks for the call, Chet. What do you think about cannabis? Give us a call. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. Is this stuff pretty scary? Should it be banned again? It's Free Talk Live.
Among other things, I've been called
frugal. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Hey, it all adds up, so it makes sense to question every expense now. For instance, can you live without your telephone landline? That bill shows up like clockwork month after month, while you make most of your calls on a smartphone, right? Unless you need what we used to call the phone company for internet access, cut the cord and take a closer look at your credit card bill. What recurring charges can you live without? Apps like Truebill help you track and manage your subscriptions. If you bank with Bank of America, their free Keep the Change feature rounds up your purchases to the next dollar and deposits it into your savings account. It all adds up. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. The US Secretary of State says Washington will walk away from efforts to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine unless there are clear signs of progress in the coming days. Marco Rubio was speaking after attending talks with Ukraine, France, Germany and the UK in the French capital. Ross Cullen reports.
The United States Secretary of State issued a stark warning to European allies and Ukraine that unless there is real progress towards a peace deal between Kiev and Moscow in the coming days, then, quote, I think we're just going to move on. Marco Rubio said, we're not going to continue with this endeavour for weeks and months on end. He was speaking after the first in-person talks between the US, Ukraine, the UK, France and Germany ahead of further meetings scheduled in London next week. Ross Cullen, Paris.
US President Donald Trump has expressed 100% confidence that the United States will reach a trade deal with the European Union. His comments came as he hosted Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni at the White House, the first European leader to visit Washington since Trump brought in 20% tariffs on the EU, then paused them earlier this month. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
The Italian Prime Minister also voiced optimism about securing a trade deal with the US, and she invited President Trump to meetings in Italy to advance those talks. Giorgia Meloni shares a warmer relationship with the president than other EU leaders. She was the only EU leader to attend Donald Trump's inauguration earlier this year, and he heaped praise on her ahead of their meeting, saying she had taken Europe by storm. She said her goal is to make the West great again. Ms. Meloni has a tightrope to walk between representing the interests of the EU and remaining in the US president's good books. Kate Fisher, Washington.
At least 3 people have died and dozens injured after a severe hailstorm and torrential rain battered Islamabad. With Pakistan ranked as the 5th most climate-vulnerable country globally, experts are sounding an alarm over worsening weather patterns and demanding the government urgently scale up climate adaptation measures. Hira Mustafa reports.
Eyewitnesses have described hailstones the size of golf balls pelting Pakistan's capital city of Islamabad. Some northern provinces have also reported flooding. The violent storm swept through the capital and northwestern parts of Pakistan on Wednesday, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Officials say there has been significant damage to solar panels, vehicles, and residential properties. In 2022, widespread flooding linked to climate change left 1/3 of the country submerged. This year, the country is seeing record heat waves with temperature at least 7 degrees above normal. Hira Mustafa, Islamabad.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. This is talk radio that you control. You can give us a call and get your thoughts on the air. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. And some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it will cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You will get a special membership badge that is visible in the Odyssey chat room, and there's a members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join today. In the studio tonight, you've got me, Stu.
Riley.
And Bonnie.
And we're going to go to the phones. We've got Sarah in New Mexico. Sarah, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yes, I actually saw like a self-driving car out of Houston in a Del Taco parking lot. And I'm like, I can't believe this. This has to be those self-driving cars. What are they doing here? And then
certainly in a Del Taco parking lot.
Why is there a Taco parking lot in Houston when it should be a Taco Cabana parking lot?
Del Taco's good.
No.
I don't like it.
They were here in Albuquerque. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, this is supposed to be like Waymo thing because it had that thing at the top. But there was actually a person inside when I looked at the car, and like, we're testing it.
Were they driving in the back? Or sorry, were they riding in the back?
No, they were testing it in the front.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, where are you guys from? I saw those Waymo in Phoenix. And it was like, we're out of Houston, Texas. And it started with a U. I did Ombo or something like that. It's a U with a 4-letter kind of a word out of and it's like, you guys are my dream come true. And then they said that when they start, they're just going to do like Uber Eats, like delivery. They're just going to deliver food. So when these, so I'm just so
Waymo?
Excited. And it starts with a Umo. Umo? Is that what it's called?
Well, there's one called Waymo, Waymo, and it's self-driving cars, formerly Google self-driving car project.
This is out of Houston, and I don't know. It's not Waymo. I don't know about the correct spelling.
There's one called Neuro that's got
maybe that's what's close.
That's got an AI-enabled self-driving capability.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
So and then I realized I said, you guys already have these self-driving taxis for Uber Eats. I've seen them at actually the thing is that we have these like robot carpet cleaners that clean the floors, but they actually carry food for them and they run around all over Union campus. I was like, what is this? I'm like, wait a minute. I was walking around. There's these cars floating around all over the place. What are they doing? And it's a self-driving taxi for food.
Wait, so once they get to the campus, a little like Roomba will take it to their door?
I think they get it close enough. I'm sure they can't climb upstairs. But if you order food, ship it, and then we already got self-driving cars at UNIM. And they're like, and then he said it's going to be something similar. Obviously, they're not going to carry passengers, not right now. They're just going to carry food in the self-driving taxis. So and he said, you guys already have it at the Union campus. I'm like, oh, yeah, we already do. And it's a trip. It's like, what are all these like little cars running around by themselves? I'm like, what is? And I'm like, it's a self-driving car taking food.
Have you guys seen the Walmart robots that do inventory? Sometimes a thing that seriously looks like Wall-E, well, more like Wall-E's girlfriend Eve, will go past you in certain Walmarts. There was one at the Walmart I worked in Cibolo, Texas, and it goes around. It kind of seems like it's cleaning the floor, but I guess it's not. It's just weird the way it's like really stuck to the floor. It's not just wheels. But anyways, and it moves, it drives. I mean, it like slowly moves through the aisles and is like scanning the, I think it's taking inventory. I forgot exactly. But those are weird.
Really?
Which is funny because like that's literally what I was paid to do, really slowly and lazily.
That's crazy.
Yeah, inventory is not a job that any human relishes. That's extremely
really?
boring
But
work.
the computer, they have a camera, and then they analyze exactly whether the shelf is full or not. I mean, how did they analyze that? They have like camera feedback that recognizes where the shelf is full or end or that technology. Well, I was thinking of getting a robot carpet cleaner because I was like tripping out. It's like, what? Because they know where a shoe is, they know where the obstacle is, and they go around it, and then they sweep up the carpet. And I'm like, I gotta get one of these because I hate sweeping up carpets.
Oh, apparently this says Walmart drops the inventory robots from its stores. So they were inventory. I thought that's what they're doing. Kind of like forgot. But apparently they stopped. It says, this was one idea we tried in roughly 500 stores, just as we were trying other ideas in additional stores. So they quit doing it. I guess maybe you guys are right that it doesn't work very well.
So these
but what about
these robot vacuums will I don't know if you care about it or not, but they will map out the inside of your house and send that information off to third parties.
Wow. So like a major data place that knows each room exactly how big it is.
Yes.
Yep.
Where all the furniture is.
Where your bed is, where your head is at night on your pillow.
Yeah.
Oh my God! But that doesn't matter. But so then it goes around it and picks up all the dirt. Well, that's pretty jazzy.
Yeah, that's the idea. Is that it knows where your furniture is, so it can go and get around it. But then, of course, it has to send it off to the cloud somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know. I talked to people. I met one lady says, I saw self-driving truck. I'm like, what? You actually saw it in person? And I met two people that saw the Waymo taxis in Phoenix. Oh yeah, I was in Phoenix and I was tripping out. Look at that was three people that saw those taxis, in person. Now I've only seen them on television and TV and things like that on the news, but I just can't wait. But we have something. But I was like, we already have those self-driving cars in the Union campus already.
I think somebody on the show already said that this is their question too. But more and more, I just think we need to know who is going to be at fault, and they need to have just as much responsibility as someone driving a car. Every time one of these things is driving and just suddenly goes into the oncoming traffic and kills another car, who's at fault? Because if it's not that you're just as responsible for killing someone as a person driving a car, it would be so easy for owners of these things to just be like, well, I'm going to take out someone. They drive on this route every single day. Oops, a self-driving car just made a mistake and now the person's dead. Like, that's how serious driving is.
Yeah, and not only that, but I saw iRobot, and I know what happens when you get in the autonomous car and suddenly it decides that you need to be dropped off at the precinct instead of the grocery store.
I've never seen iRobot.
I think I would have a hard time trusting one of those.
Well, the thing is, accountability of a driver, there is no accountability in the state of New Mexico.
Then it needs to not be allowed. If I need to pass a driver's license test to be on the road, there shouldn't be death machines that have no accountability if they go into oncoming traffic.
Well, it's always this, I was an accident. Well, I was drunk and I got blacked out. I didn't know how drunk I was. It's always
those people definitely get in trouble.
It was just an accident. I didn't know. It's like a speeding ticket. Well, I didn't know I was going over 10 miles over the speed limit.
Well, now you're complaining. Like you're conflating going 10 miles over the speed limit with driving into oncoming traffic and killing someone on the spot.
Yeah, those are a bit different.
It's always chopped up as like, I didn't mean to do it. What accountability for a driver?
It's not just always chopped up to when they kill someone. That's just not true. Like, I've never heard of somebody killing someone while they're driving and then saying, oh, I didn't mean to, and getting off.
Yeah, I don't think so. Thanks for the call tonight, Sarah. Man, I don't know.
That's just the world she lives in because she hates drivers so much.
Yeah, she absolutely can't stand people navigating their own, heavy chunks of steel down the road. Even though most of us do it just fine without causing any damage.
Why would she be okay with them having no accountability then? It makes no sense. It's like, does she not think that any pedestrian's going to get hit by one of these things?
I don't know. Maybe, I don't know.
I would love to have an autonomous, a driverless car for my personal use, but I also understand the risks. So,
yeah. And it would just be like, well.
And not only that, they would make traffic flow so much faster because you wouldn't have, all these traffic slowdowns that are simply due to people rubbernecking or not knowing how to merge or whatever the deal is.
Sightseeing.
If all the cars are self-driving, they all know where each other is and they all just go real fast to where they're going.
Actually, you just gave me a new reason to never want a self-driving car. Like, people are always like, well, why wouldn't you want one? What if it's better in all these ways? Well, if I want to slow down to look at a cool building next to me, I'm going to rubberneck and sightsee.
Yeah.
It's my car.
Yep,
and I do it every day.
Point.
I look at sunsets and stuff like that, and I'll slow down and look at it.
Right, and maybe there's somewhere, off the beaten path, so to speak, that you want to go, and the car's fully capable, but just refuses to go there because it doesn't see that road on a map or whatever.
Unsafe. Unsafe.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go to the phones again. We've got David.
I knew it.
David, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, Virgin.
Mobile?
No. The Mormon Virgin.
The Virgin River?
No. The Virgin. The
I got Riley to
laugh. Huh? What?
I said I got Riley to laugh because I made a Utah joke.
Yeah.
Well, this is a Utah joke. They conveniently put Virgin right between Hilldale and Colorado City. How convenient is that?
That is hilarious.
For listeners who aren't aware of the Utah Mormon stuff, that's where the FLDS like to hang out, or where they were originally hanging out. Now they have like a compound in Texas or something, but
Texas, North Dakota.
That's kind of this northern chunk of Utah that's right there by the Arizona border, and you have to drive around the Grand Canyon to get to it, and so that's why they were left alone for so long right there.
So southern chunk of Utah?
Yeah, southern chunk of Utah, you meant.
Because isn't the...
Yeah, very southern Utah or very northern Arizona. And so for the Arizona officials to get there...
We were talking about...
It's logistically not feasible.
Yeah. We were talking about raids earlier, and I think at one point the FLDS population was actually raided by the feds in Utah in the 1950s.
2-year-old cult members.
Yeah.
That are...
Yeah.
We're justifying murdering.
Yep.
Well, they're a cult member. I put a label on them. Let's murder them. I don't even know if any FLDS kids got murdered in that case. I guess I was more talking about Waco.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think any kids died in that, but I think some were taken from their families, which is going to be a traumatizing event.
Yeah, it is.
And even though I don't necessarily agree with the social implications of what polygamy does to these societies, especially what it does to the young men, it's not necessarily causing me any harm, and they're not a dangerous cult like people might want you to believe.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to Virgin.
Yeah, well, I mean, how convenient is that? I mean, they put Virgin right between Hilldale and Colorado City. I mean...
it's pretty convenient, man. It's a convenient joke.
Yeah. And, speaking of...
well, I never noticed that one, but I did notice that they put Fillmore and Beaver right next to each other.
There you go. Yeah, that
ridiculous.
Works too.
Within 100 miles of each other.
And those Mormons make jokes in Beaver. They have like bumper stickers and signs. It's like, wow, I can't believe they think it's funny.
Yep.
And then there's also the Salt Lake, Utah shirts. The SLUT shirts.
I don't think any Mormons wearing those.
Oh, probably not.
Might be too
You're saying that Mormons don't have a sense of humor, Bonnie?
Well, the Mormons also have the beer company that's Polygamy Porter. I think that's actually Mormon owned.
No, that's not Mormon owned.
Well, the Mormons also laugh about
the
Book of Mormon, and I'm always shocked by that. That's like really far. I've only seen I've never actually went and watched the Book of Mormon.
We're talking about the Book of Mormon musical.
Oh yeah, sorry, the musical.
Is the book better than the musical? Do you think? I don't know.
I don't know if Trey Parker, is that his name, and Matt Stone wrote the Bible, it'd probably be better. Or the Book of Mormon would probably be better.
Probably.
But I always am shocked by Mormons being like, yeah, my parents watch that. I'm like, seriously? My parents wouldn't even watch that, and they're not like exactly Mormons, but it's like seems too sacrilegious for Mormons to laugh about. I bet the most staunch of Mormons would never,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there are still some that I'm like, whoa, I can't believe that they think that's funny at all.
Well, true believing Mormons have a whole lot of cognitive dissonance to deal with, especially in the internet age where it's easy to dig up facts like Joseph Smith was a stone-looking treasure seeker who
Speaking
wrote
of
the Book of Mormon while looking into a hat at a rock.
when Riley brought up, he said that they'll give out their own carve-outs for when you can do a drug, like if a doctor told you so. One time I had dental work done and I was it was laughing gas, but also I told them I was so scared. I was like, I seriously, can I be put to sleep or something? They're like, no, you can't be put to sleep, but we'll give you like an anxiety medicine for before. So I took it 30 minutes before, and I was also on nitrous. And it was like I was just watching Bob's Burgers on the TV, and I didn't feel a thing or even realize that it wasn't my doctor the whole time. It was a different doctor. But anyways, when I sat up and I was just like, whoa, you're not my doctor. And I was talking to those people, I was like, wait a second, can I ask you a question? I was still very like high. I was like, are you guys Mormons? And they're like, yeah. It was like a little awkward, but I was high, so it wasn't awkward to me. And I was like, how can you guys be okay with giving me these drugs? Because like I'm high right now. Like, would you guys do these drugs for like dental work? And they're like, well, they're very nice. They were super nice about it. They weren't like insulted, even though it was kind of like offensive. Like I would never do this sober. I would never have asked anyone that.
They were Mormons.
Yeah, exactly. And they were like, well, the thing is, we believe that it's okay for certain medical reasons, and it's okay because it's for medication, not recreational use. And I was just like, wow, that's crazy.
There's a fair amount of evidence that Joseph Smith was into psychedelics and had in fact dosed his entire congregation for the dedication of the Kirtland Temple, where they had many miraculous things, such as babies jumping out of their mother's arms to swing handkerchiefs around. And
I didn't hear that story.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I guess one of the young men there threw up into the spittle box. Like just kept throwing up into it. The guy sitting next to him kept having to empty it out the window.
Oh wow.
It was one of the accounts told from that day.
Interesting.
Definitely sounds like a very drug-induced party.
Yeah.
Wow.
Joseph Smith, clearly a stoner.
Yeah.
And a frequent mushroom flyer.
Yep.
Yeah, he probably learned these tricks from a guy named Walter Lumens.
Is that a real person?
Yes.
And he was somebody that met Joseph Smith, and people think that Joseph Smith learned to do drugs with him?
Yes.
Whoa.
Essentially.
So
Yeah. Long story
Walter
short.
Lumens was enlightened.
Right. Yes, that's a very good point.
Wow, man, he must have lived over there in the avenues.
Maybe this connection to God is what caused him to have prophecies. Well,
probably out in Old Magna, rather.
Probably. I would definitely say that his first visionary experience could have been brought on by psychedelics, even though he was allegedly 14 at the time.
Oh, there's that. I actually wasn't even referencing that. I wanted to egg Stu on to tell the story about him.
Which version?
Prophesying 9/11.
Because that changed a bunch. Oh,
Yeah,
the 9/11 thing?
Oh, yeah.
His first vision story changed a bunch of times, but this whole 9/11 thing was he had a prophecy on September 11th. I forgot which year. That 5 years later exactly they would return to Zion, which was Independence, Missouri.
Right.
And they never ended up doing that because when that 5-day march rolled around, Joe Smith was digging for treasure in Boston in some old lady's basement, I think.
I'd have to go look at that prophecy because that's interesting to me.
I don't know why you brought up Old Magma, but I went to a haunted pizza shop and it's Magma or Magna?
Magna.
Okay, Magna, yeah. I went to a haunted pizza restaurant and they let us go into their basement and they had like a ghost words generator thing on and they told us all their scary stories and yeah. I went to a haunted place there.
That's weird because I don't remember any place like that out there.
Yeah, the Ghost Adventurers went there.
Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah, Old Magna's a weird place.
I don't remember it being called Old. I mean, now we're just Utah talking.
They just call it Old Magna because it's the small section of Magna to the very west of what is now, the larger city of Magna. There's this small neighborhood on the west side that's like the original part, and it's very old, very run down, lots of drugs and desperate people.
That's sad that I Googled it and it was Magna. It says, did a witch's curse put Nona's Pizzeria out of business? Probably not. That is what it was, though, it was Nona's. They were Italian, and they were super nice. And we went there, and we were like, oh, we had heard about it. We all love Ghost Adventures. It was me and my boss and her daughter and my sister. And my boss's daughter was just one of those people that just say whatever comes to her mind. And we were in there eating, and we're like, yep, I guess we're here. I guess it's all we came here for. It was good pizza. And then my boss's daughter said to the waitress, like, can we go in the basement? And she was like, sure. Like, I wasn't intending to do that, but it looks like we've got time if you want to go down there. And she charged us, and we went into the basement. It was really scary. Nothing like crazy happened. It was just scary.
Interesting.
But apparently went out of business, and now they're saying it was a witch. The thing was, it used to be a brothel. I almost thought I couldn't say that on the air, but of course I can. In like, old Western times, so there's definitely a lot of bad stuff that went down there.
Where they make soup?
What?
Is that where they make soup?
No. Stop it with the puns that are actually making me giggle.
Why do they name it brothel then?
I don't know. I have no idea why that name is that name.
That's silly. Talking about polygamists, the Indians that the Mormons replaced, they were polygamists too. Is that where the Mormons got it from?
I don't know. So. Honestly, that's a good point because they lived with the Indians for a really long time. So I never even thought about that. Well,
I know polygamy originated with Joseph Smith, so I don't think so.
Oh, okay. So he never made it to Utah. So
no.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Well, the way it was explained to me by my good Mormon friend Raven, Indian name, but he said that back in the day, the polygamy was largely because, as most cults, churches, they have more female followers than male. And so they had a shortage of men and an excess of women, and voila, polygamy. Solved the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll get you a big society real fast.
Yeah. And you're talking about earlier, you're talking about emancipated minors, like who is it the state's job to decide if you're old enough to do this, that, or whatever, or is it the parents' job or the parents? And so, as long as you're talking about Indians, or I'm talking about Indians, the way that they decided, like when a dude wanted to, if he might be 15, 16, whatever, and he wants to move out of his parents' lodge and get a few women and start his own lodge and make some babies and stuff. He was old enough when he could steal enough horses to buy a woman.
Well,
how do you like that, Bonnie?
That sounds bad because he stole the horses.
Yeah.
He's old enough to steal my horse. He's old enough to get shot.
Well, they did try to shoot him. So then you would, if somebody tried to shoot you, then you would just kill him. And then you take all.
Not if I shoot him first. It's like a pretty silly hypothetical.
All right, thanks for the call, David. That's all we have time for tonight. If you didn't get your call in tonight, you can call us tomorrow night, and there will be a show 7 or 10 p.m. Eastern Time. This has been Free Talk Live.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join today.
How many lawyers does it take to change a light bulb? None. They'd rather keep their clients in the dark. There are too many lawyer jokes to count. However, there are some lawyers with more noble intentions. At the Institute for Justice, we bring the light to our clients. We are a non-profit public interest law firm with clear values and principles. At IJ, we fight for those whose most basic rights are denied by the government. Visit our website today at ij.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is